We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. There's a ton of wide receiver groupings out there that are in a little bit of transition, but I want everyone to know that we're going to help you through it. We're going to dive into how to use these narratives that everyone's talking about to find an edge in the most important position in fantasy football and in DFS. If we're talking about wide receivers, you already know who's here. Yahoo Sports, Reception Perception, obviously his YouTube channel this year. And at this point, if you haven't checked that out, I don't know what you're doing. Matt Harmon, how are we doing?
I appreciate you, Joe. Yeah, man, it's the last month of the season. We bleed into January more so than normal this year. But yeah, there's all kinds of teams. Obviously, like backfields are in flux, wide receiver rooms are in flux, even some quarterback situations are maybe sort of kind of up in the air. So man, it's interesting. It's an interesting time of year. We'll talk about some of those teams today, and I'm glad to be here for it.
Yeah, definitely an interesting time of the year. I think that as people are going down their home stretch in regular season long fantasy, this stuff becomes increasingly important just because a lot of these situations have kind of changed throughout the year. And honestly, in DFS, sometimes the pricing takes a few weeks to kind of catch up to what these new roles are. Obviously, some injuries can happen. Also, just some of these guys are seeing a lot more opportunity than we saw at the beginning of the year. So let's talk about the 49ers first, Harmon, because Debo's obviously going to miss about 1 to 2 weeks. We could see Juwan Jennings run as the team's wide receiver 2 at this point. But George Kittle aside, Brandon Ayuk, huge opportunity here for him to show everyone what he can do, right, Harmon?
Absolutely. And it's weird too, because it's kind of hard to talk about Debo as just a wide receiver because he's basically, we know he does everything in the backfield too. He's kind of the straw that stirs the drink of this offense, really. And so it's sort of tough to say okay, this opportunity is going to trickle down to all these other wide receivers. The part of the thing that we loved about this offense, or at least I loved about it coming into the year, was theoretically it was going to be highly concentrated between 3 guys, Debo, Ayuk, and George Kittle. Obviously, there was so much chaos with the Ayuk thing. Kittle goes on IR for a long time, so it was really just all Debo all the time. And some of these guys like Mohamed Sanu and Trenton Sherfield had sprinkled in as well. But I think the version that we've gotten of this offense over the last month, basically, a little bit more than that, is kind of the ideal version of this attack. And, meanwhile, all that time, from not a overall slice of the pie, team perspective, but from just a strict wide receiver perspective, things had already been shifting from Debo to Ayuk, right? This guy is 11th in the NFL in receiving yards since week 8. Brandon Ayuk, that is, has started to turn into the guy that so many of us, myself, chief among them, were so excited to see this season. He is starting to become that guy. He's great over the middle of the field. I think he could even do more than what he's been asked to do in this Jimmy G version of the offense. So I think Ayuk is a set it and forget it guy in redraft leagues right now. I think he's still undervalued in daily fantasy. Their daily fantasy pricing is still kind of holding the whole doghouse situation over Brandon Ayuk, keeping him down there because he's been productive and he's certainly going to have to be leaned on more. I don't think that he will take, quote, the Debo role or anything like that, because Debo Samuel is the most unique player in the NFL, especially guys that have WR next to their name. He's one of the most, if not the most unique players at that position. So I don't think he's going to be lining up Brandon Ayuk. I don't think he's going to be lining up in the backfield like that. I think he will just have to be asked to do more. And yeah, definitely guys like Juwan Jennings, who profiles as more of a big slot receiver type. Maybe he can work over the middle, because everything's got to be over the middle with Jimmy G. It's all got to be timing and anticipation, which works when you have a really great stretch running game with guys like Elijah Mitchell, and then Kittle and Ayuk both blocking great on the edge. So I know that Debo is a huge loss for sure. I think Ayuk can step up as well as Juwan Jennings, perhaps as a flyer, maybe could get into the mix too.
Yeah, it's interesting pricing wise too, because you look at this, George Kittle 6,300, so he's actually significantly less expensive than Brandon Ayuk at 7K. And even in this game this week, we basically have to decide if we want Ayuk, if we want Metcalf, Lockett, because they are kind of priced similarly. It's just I guess, even transitioning slightly to Jimmy G, does this guy really, if he's not going to succeed now, when is he going to succeed, right? The way these guys win, too, is absolutely perfect, because he doesn't really have to throw the deep ball. He just throws it to them in space, and they're just so good after the catch and breaking through tackles and stuff like that. I kind of love, not as a Cardinals fan, but just in general, love how this offense has been built, because all of these guys can just break big plays, break tackles. They play that type of style that you would think would kind of be one of those ones that you would want this time of year, right? So Ayuk is a really interesting use case, I think. But if he does end up kind of becoming what we all expected him to be earlier in the season. Now more targets should be going his way. It is a pretty nice opportunity here. I'm I guess, interested to see if people are going to hit him on that price tag, though, at 7K. But definitely an interesting spot. Do you know anything about Juwan Jennings? Obviously, he seems like that guy. If he scores a touchdown pass, it's always the week that I play George Kittle and ruins my day. But yeah, I don't know much about him, but I do think it could potentially just be the Ayuke and Kittle show.
Yeah, like I said, I think this offense has been so concentrated of late, and we know they're going to remain extremely run heavy, and Seattle can be run on for sure. So I don't know how much opportunity is going to trickle down to a guy like Jennings. He can certainly be available in the red zone. I think he's pretty decent at the catch point. Like I said, profiles is kind of, this is a team that was bringing Jordan Matthews like in and out of the operation the last few years. Like Jordan Matthews has always been that like big slot receiver. I think they even tried to like give him a shot at tight end at some point too, which was never going to work. Give me a break. But like that is like, if I could compare Juwan Jennings to a player, it's like a poor man's Jordan Matthews when Jordan Matthews was like actually good 100 years ago at this point. So that's kind of the player that I would say. So yeah, maybe red zone involvement, big slot involvement. But yeah, I do agree with you. I think this is mostly going to funnel through Ayuke and Kittle. And to your point about Jimmy G, he really is never going to attack deep outside the numbers. It's just not his game. And I think Ayuke can actually really thrive in those areas. I think he thrived in those areas with quarterbacks. Like, I mean, we have to remember too, like, this is really the first time we've seen Jimmy G and Brandon Ayuke like as full-time players together over the last, month or so. And the 49ers offense has been great over the last month. They're like third in offensive EPA since week 8, I believe, or at least heading into last week. So there's so much to like here. I think it all comes back to that stretch running game with a guy like Elijah Mitchell pressing the edge and everything, and these guys blocking extremely well. That allows that does force teams to like defend those sideline areas, even if they're not doing it in the passing game. They are doing it in the running game, which does open up the middle of the field for Jimmy G to throw a lot of I think Kittle could absolutely smash in this game. I know we're talking about Ayuke, and I'm in on Ayuke at that draft at that price as well, but still, I do think this is a huge Kittle game incoming. You'd have to imagine.
How many people have asked you to chart George Kittle this year or Kyle Pitts, like these tight ends?
Hey,
you can't open. You cannot open that box, Harmon. I'm telling you, if you do it once, people are going to want it forever. Do not do that.
1,000%. I mean, people have been asking me to do this since the days of like Jordan Reed. Oh, Jordan Reed's different than most tight ends, right? Like Travis Kelce different than, and then like Kyle Pitts is coming in and like, I mean, at least he's not producing. I feel like the cries would be louder for it. But yeah, man, people always want to see the tight ends, but it's like starting back at square one with reception perception data. It's like I could tell you that this guy's got this success rate, but like, what do I, as a tight end? What am I comparing to? So, I'm trying to resist that as much as I can.
I remember those days when people were first blowing you up about that. Hey, man, maybe you were right about Cordero Patterson, by the way. You were the first one that was all over him. Yeah, it was just like the delayed reveal on him. But yeah, guys, before we move on.
He blocked on Twitter, though, despite all that.
Does he?
I took for him. Yeah,
that's absurd,
I don't know
man.
why. Yeah, I don't know why. But
I'm more of a mute guy myself. Yeah. All right. I do have something I'm pretty excited about that I want to tell everyone. We have a second YouTube channel for the Joe Holka Show, so make sure you guys subscribe over there immediately. Going to be rolling out a bunch more clips from the guests, some exclusive picks and analysis that's only going to be over there. You can't find them anywhere else, so there's a link in the description. There's a link in the pinned comment. There's probably one in the chat also. It takes 2 seconds, would really help me out. But Harmon, what everyone wants to talk about is Odell Beckham Jr. after his long touchdown last week. Regardless, we've seen the target share kind of condensed for the Rams recently after Woods went down. So what do we think about this group of wide receivers? OBJ, Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson. Going forward, this is going to be one that might be a little bit frustrating, but we might be able to find some value also.
Yeah, that sluggo route was really impressive from Odell Beckham. I mean, if you look at, I mentioned this on the show, I think a few weeks ago, I did chart Odell Beckham in the middle of the season. His article is still up on receptionperception.com, looking at, where he was getting open, where he was getting separation in terms of his reception perception sample with the Cleveland Browns. That is still live on the site if people do want to go check it out. But yeah, I think he can still play. I think he can still get open. I think he can still get open deep. That was the big thing. And that was really great to see that come to fruition, even if it was late in the game last week for the LA Rams. It's tough with these Rams wide receivers because I think that Van Jefferson is going to be a good play. Like, I think he's a good player, and I think he's going to be very volatile of these guys because he's still going to get some high degree of difficulty targets. He's still going to get some vertical looks as well. I think they'll try to mix Beckham in more in the short game. Those quick hitters, some of the backside digs, everything like that is fundamental to this offense. I think those will be mixed in for Beckham more going forward. I'm a little nervous about clicking Cooper Kupp, still extremely high salary in daily fantasy. And I do kind of wonder with just the state of this offensive ecosystem overall. Like I kind of think they need to get back to just like funneling, targets to Cooper Kupp early in the game. They've been really bad about that. Although like game logs for Cooper Kupp look relatively fine from like a floor perspective because like he gets there eventually, but they get to him pretty late, in the last couple of games. Like they've gotten to him in kind of like in garbage time and everything like that. I know I say that as somebody that had the over on his against the Titans, and I barely missed it. Barely missed it, I think. And he was getting so many garbage time yards. So, listen, I think these guys are going to be tough to predict. I almost kind of just want to not touch the Rams offense against the Jaguars, even though it is an enticing matchup from a passing game perspective. Darrell Henderson kind of banged up in the backfield. I don't know what they're doing with the running game. They're like not splitting carries between him and Sony Michel. They're not really, I think they kind of need to get back to like establishing the run too. So there's so many questions with this offense right now that I have been tempted to just fade these Rams receivers, even though theoretically Beckham is at a really good price point when like the opportunity is pretty equal between him and Cooper Kupp, at least from like a target perspective, a routes perspective. And, the vertical looks are still going to probably go Beckham's way. He's also still on the injury report, like a hit point or something like that. So yeah, I feel like I'm kind of backing away from this Rams offense, and especially in the passing game, even though it's a really tempting spot and all these guys, it's concentrated between these three receivers. It's just tough to dole out right now. Maybe when Cooper Kupp's like, if his, I don't know, but that's the thing, Joe, like, is his salary ever realistically going to come down?
Probably not.
Is it because probably not at this point because he had so many great weeks to start the season. And it's not as if he's disappearing because the final game log, he gets there, but it's always those floor games. So I'm a little nervous about that going forward, but we shall see. I probably will not be playing these guys in a game where they should just, moonwalk to victory, but it's tough to say with the Rams right now.
Yeah, we're going to have to keep an eye, I think, on the target shares of snaps. Like, I think TJ Hernandez, friend of the show, tweeted something out after the game last week, just how, like, basically even it is. These guys are on the field basically the entire game together, and the target share was pretty well distributed. I guess if you do need a bull signal for Cooper Kupp, one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting, Jacksonville has actually faced the third fewest deep balls this year. So I guess they've been kind of middle of the pack in terms of their efficiency against it, but they're just really not seeing a ton of deep balls. Maybe that's part of the just division as a whole, but I guess an interesting wrinkle to that one. Anything else on the Rams?
No, I mean, just you don't have to do too much to beat the Jaguars.
There you go. There you go.
You just dink and dunk there.
All right, so the Miami Dolphins, this is another interesting wide receiver group at the moment. I think that the return of Devontae Parker, it definitely could affect Jalen Waddle a little bit down the stretch. Maybe we see a little bit less of Gesicki also, but do you think that this is a good thing for Jalen Waddle in some ways? Like, he's maybe not built to be that true alpha anyway, so having at least another weapon out there that's somewhat viable could be good. I'm just kind of piecing this together, but I'm curious your thoughts.
Tua right now, 43% of his passes have been play action, 43% of his dropbacks. That is like in its own neighborhood. Kyler and Lamar are second and third, and they're like 37 and 36%. Like nobody is over 40%. By the way, it's insane how far we've come on the whole play action thing that these guys are at, this high. The league leaders back in 2015, 2016, they were sub like 20%. It was like, 16% play action. That's really aggressive for old Matt Ryan, his MVP year, stuff like that. So it's crazy how far we've come with that. Ben Solak wrote a really good piece in the Ringer. I'd encourage everybody to go check it out about like Tua and the RPO game, whether you agree or disagree with like his final conclusions. I think it's an interesting thing to think about right now. It just shows how heavy they are running these over the middle RPOs, and that is really what Tua thrived in as a collegiate player. I think it's really what he's been thriving in so far, especially since coming back from injury. And I think it makes sense because this offensive line in Miami absolutely stinks. Like they're one of the worst pass blocking units in the entire NFL. They have been all season. Like that has been one of the parts of the rebuild that has absolutely not worked out for the Miami Dolphins. So I'm interested to see how Devontae Parker fits in this style of offense because he's like an outside the numbers contested catch vertical receiver. I don't think he fits with this like very RPO heavy attack. So if there's any worry out there, I think that Parker is going to drag things down for Waddle, maybe even Gesicki, but especially Waddle. I'm kind of not buying on that because I don't think from a player stylistic fit perspective that Devontae Parker, and I'm not saying like you can't play Parker on the cheap or anything like that. I just think from like, I don't think he's going to take away from Jalen Waddle, who, by the way, has just looked better and better throughout the year. I mean, it's worth remembering this guy. We talked about Tua with his like catastrophic injury in college, the hip thing, everything like that. Jalen Waddle barely played last year. He played in like the national championship for some reason on this like horrific ankle injury that limited him to, I think, just like 5 games overall last year. And then that was apparently still bothering him in training camp and portions of the off season. It makes sense that he's looking better and better as the season goes along because he's a speed guy. And I think he maybe doesn't have the build and the prototypical skill set of an alpha receiver, but man, I think he can be a target hog type of guy. I'm more impressed than ever. And like the yards per catch are starting to catch up, I think, with the explosion, the theoretical explosion of Jalen Waddle getting all these in-breakers on this RPO offense. So I'm still very bullish on Waddle at the cost right now. Matchup with the Giants defense is starting to fade a little bit too. I really do like Jalen Waddle going forward and this week.
Yeah, we finally saw him break one of those plays that was kind of just not necessarily a dump off, but one of those short to intermediate routes where he just took it to the house. We've been talking about that, what feels like, for weeks. I guess we were bound to be right eventually.
I've been waiting on that all season. Like I was like, that's the play right there. That was the one I've been waiting to see all year. And it was still like, take that thing to the house or something, Jalen. Come on.
Exactly. Yeah. How does a guy that fast get caught from behind? That was absolutely nuts. But one of the things I wanted to do quickly, I guess, was run the sims on this specific slate. And both of these guys, Gesicki and Waddle, still popping in about 15% of the optimal lineups. Run the sims is one of those tools that we use to simulate the slate 10,000 times very quickly and use some of the pricing and inputs there. So decent spot against this Giants team this week. And it seems like the sims like Waddle just like we do. So appreciate you, Harmon. Make sure everyone goes and checks out his YouTube channel. A lot of great stuff going up throughout the week on that one. Check out the new YouTube channel for me as well. Follow Matt on Twitter at @Matt_BRB. Anything else, Harmon? Quick in and out today, but definitely getting down the stretch, man. This stuff kind of sneaks up on us a little bit. It's like the grind of the middle of the season, and then like bam, playoff time.
I know. I actually still can't believe there's six games left.
Crazy.
There's still 6 weeks left, which feels crazy. But yeah, man, I appreciate you as always. It's definitely an interesting time with all these wide receiver cores in flux. So hopefully we can help some people out this week.
All right, man. We'll see you next week. Appreciate you. We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. Week 13 games of the week, DFS stacks and best bets, going deep into some key situations that we have to get right this week in fantasy football, DFS, and betting. To help us break it all down, per usual, he's a weekly guest on the Joe Holka Show. You guys know him from the worksheet at sharpfootballanalysis.com, on Twitter at Lord Reeves. Rich Hribar, how we living, my man? Season's flying by.
I mean, you say so, but it is December. So
Not for you, maybe, I guess, hey? When you got to write, like, what is it, like 5,000 words every week?
I mean, there's one more bye week left, and then check in on me weeks 15, 16, 17, see how I'm doing.
Oh, man. All right.
When nobody's reading anything because only, 10% of their fantasy leagues are still alive.
That's the thing, right? We were just talking about with Harmon, like half these people, like they're either completely dead, they've run into, you've probably run into injuries at some point if you played season long this year, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like the running back position is just an absolute shambles. So then we start to see like some people trickle towards DFS and all of that stuff. But yeah, man, I'm with you. Like people are done reading waiver wire articles and that sort of thing, right? But the good news is the worksheet has a lot of stuff in the micro that I think can really help us in DFS and in season long. So it's one of the things that I'm trying to add to my process a little bit more. But I'm going to get you out of here as quick as possible this week, Reeves. So let's start with game number one. We're starting with Vikings at Lions this week, and Minnesota is currently a 7-point road favorite in this one per FanDuel Sportsbook. The total sits at just 46.5 points, the fifth highest on the main slate, but we do love to attack these teams that are just like slightly below that top tier from an ownership perspective in GPP. So nothing super notable from the sharps so far in the betting perspective, but the money line is something we rarely talk about. But what I thought was kind of interesting is that 89% of the money right now, only 43% of the bets is actually on Minnesota at minus 300. So I don't know, Reeves, no Dalvin Cook. What were your initial thoughts with this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at this slate as it lays out, I mean, we've got a lot of early games that are kind of more one-sided, and this one is one-sided, but at least this has a couple plays on the other side that maybe we can talk ourselves into. I mean, you've got the Bucks against the Falcons. We've got the Colts are going to hammer spot against the Texans. It's just really kind of one side. We don't have a lot of these back and forth games in the early slate. The Eagles are at the Jets. So you'll see a lot of stacks. And then later on, we have the Rams against the Jaguars, who are huge favorites too. There's going to be a lot of Bucks, Colts, and Rams stacks out there, but I don't know if there's going to be any bringbacks. At least here, there might be a bringback or two. So I chose this game to mix it up. So we'll go with that. But yeah, I mean, FanDuel did a good job this week with most of the backup running backs. I mean, they priced Alexander Madison up at 8,700, and I think that creates a nice little fulcrum point because he's at a spot where he still is arguably a really good play at 8,700 against the Lions team that has been absolutely crushed by running backs the entire season, but at least now makes you make a decision, right? He's just not an auto play at 7K or 6.5. So I like that they did that. I don't like that they left Sony Michel at 5.3, and we'll probably get to that when we get to the lineup building portion. Maybe next year we'll do this on Fridays and we'll have the full injury information, but FanDuel leaving Sony Michel out there at 5.3.
How did they skip over that when Alexander Madison, they move all the way, basically the same price? I think he is the exact same price as what Dalvin would have been. So that's an interesting one. I guess for Madison, before we move on kind of from that specifically, if we run the sims on this game, Reeves, even at that price point, he's the number one optimal rate player. 30% of the optimal lineups still have Alexander Madison in them. So yeah, I guess the price didn't matter, but at least now we can make the decision. Before, if he was like 6,500, he would have been the best player on the slate by a mile.
Yeah, I mean, because we look at Kenny Wangu's not he's not a traditional running back in the sense where like he's gonna get a lot of touches. He'll get some touches, but like he's not gonna get any money touches. Like he's not gonna get the goal line. He's not gonna play on third downs. Even as exciting as it would be to see him get involved in the offense a little bit and what they can scheme up for him. So I mean, Madison's still gonna accrue all of those money touches we like against, like I said, a team that's literally been crushed by running backs all year, except for Thanksgiving, which actually was nice because we didn't play any David Montgomery anyways. But yeah, it's just a great spot for him as a huge favorite indoors. And honestly, Alexander Madison, he does not start a lot of NFL games, but when he does, they are against the Detroit Lions.
Yeah,
like he's to be his fifth start and his third start against the Lions, and the previous two, he's at 145 yards and 2 touchdowns and 153 yards and a touchdown. Early in the season, he started one of these in this season against Lions. He had 32 touches in that game. So yeah, I mean he's still a really good play still. But it does create us with also another leverage point of, hey, we can still play this passing game if we want as well. Kirk Cousins is still, he's coming off of only his 4th game where he wasn't a top 12 fantasy scorer on the week. But all his peripheral stats are still really good. And he's, going against the Lions team that's 29th in touchdown rate allowed to opposing quarterbacks. They're 31st in yards allowed per completion. They're 30th in passing points for fantasy allowed per pass attempt. Their only saving grace is they only face 30 pass attempts per game, which is the 2nd fewest in the league. But it's another good spot, I think, for Cousins to bounce back. And I think a lot of people might look at that early game and not want to play Cousins, right? He didn't hit against the Lions earlier in the season. But all the matchups, he still threw for 8.1 yards per pass attempt in that game. I still think it's a really good spot for him. And Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen as well. Jefferson, we don't really need to really highlight a case for him anymore. I mean, look at since Clint Kubiak said that they were going to get him more involved in the offense, he's had target shares of 31%, 29%, and 28%. That's what we love. A guy I feel like he's still not even priced as high as he could be.
Man, there's a ton of guys in this game that are popping the optimals right now after the sim stuff. So like Justin Jefferson still 16%, and even at that price point. And then I'm sure you're going to talk about Jamal Williams at some point, but he's the 3rd highest frequency. So I think there actually could be some chalk in this game, even though it's like not like that, I guess, of a high total. So I'm glad we're talking about this one because I think this might be like a really significant decision point on the slate overall for sure.
Yeah, and you still have Adam Thielen doing what he does. Him and Mike Evans both are basically living the same exact life that they lived last year. Not really catching a lot of passes, but they're getting in the box a lot, scoring a lot of touchdowns, and living that life. So Thielen's still living that way. And Thielen only has one game when you think about like just the context of the offense. He only has one game where he's at fewer than 20% of the Minnesota targets. Still very condensed target tree, which we like. And
he's been
really
like the perfect late swap guy because he's always like at least half the ownership of Jefferson.
Yes.
So like you get him in there, you just hope he has a touchdown. Like last week, he gets in the box twice at like 2% ownership and everything. It's like the perfect late swap guy, but the hard guy to click over Jefferson when they are pretty. I mean, they're priced pretty similarly. They're only $400 apart on FanDuel, so that's definitely an interesting group as well. Yeah. So
and then yeah, on the Lions side, I mean, obviously the big standout is Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift. I mean, we're recording this at 2:30 on a Thursday. The latest news is that he seems pretty doubtful to play. That was just a couple minutes ago. I saw across the line that he seems like a longer shot to play. So I mean, you really have Jamal Williams, and anytime that we've had a time for Jamal Williams to kind of play in accrue backfield touches, he's been really solid. Now, granted, previous versions were in the Green Bay offense. This is the Detroit offense.
sure.
But Dan Campbell has shown that he's going to be run heavy no matter what. Like they're going to run the football a lot. And this offense is basically predicated on giving the ball to their backs. And Jamal Williams can catch the football. He came in on Thanksgiving and had 5 catches. They weren't for a ton of yards, but the fact that he is involved in the passing game and can catch football still gives us a little bit of a grasp of a floor. I think we'll see, Jamar Jefferson and, Godwin and Ngwabuke still get some touches. But I think that Jamal Williams still is going to accrue basically the lion's share. No pun intended on that. That was totally not intended.
That was sharp, Reeves. I know you didn't do that on purpose, but like I would write that one down if I was you. It's pretty good.
And he's going to be playing against this Vikings team that we talked about. Last week, we didn't know Elijah Mitchell was going to play it, but we talked about this spot against this Vikings defense, right? They're missing so many pieces. Michael Pierce and Danielle Hunter still probably aren't going to play. We'll see if Dalvin Tomlinson comes off the COVID list and can play, but they are 31st in EPA against the run. They just are not stopping the run at all this season. And the Vikings are the Lions are still going to run the football. That's what they do. So I think that, Jamal Williams obviously is a really good kind of a floor play at his price. I think he's really, really a really sound play. And if you get a touchdown at these price points at FanDuel, like you're just really, really sitting pretty. I don't know if people are going to get all the way down to Josh Reynolds again. He did run another route on 85% of the dropbacks on Thanksgiving, caught like the long touchdown pass to kind of start it off. I don't know how far we'll get down there, but he's another option you can kind of get cute with. I don't know if we'll get there, but he does exist. The one guy I think to outright avoid is Hawkinson. I mean, the Vikings have absolutely crushed tight ends this season. They're 3rd in the NFL in catch rate allowed to tight ends. They've allowed just a 1.6 touchdown rate to tight ends. George Kittle just had 1 catch for 13 yards against them. Mark Andrews 5 for 44. Dalton Schultz 2 for 11. Hawkinson himself had just 2 for 22. So they've been pretty good against tight ends. They used Pat Pete to guard George Kittle last week, which was pretty interesting. But he's going to be out, it looks like, this week, so they won't be able to do that with Hawkinson. But they didn't do that in the first game. But yeah, I think that maybe we were looking at Jamal Williams and maybe a little bit of Josh Reynolds if we want to get really cute, but I don't know if we'll get there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I never really know what to do with some of these Detroit wide receivers anyways. It's like pick your
Mhm.
poison, but the ceiling isn't going to be that high just because, I mean, they're
Yeah.
not going to have a high team total basically ever. Like we were attacking this Minnesota defense like through the middle of the field. They're bad they're basically bad everywhere in the passing game in terms of defending. But man, it is Jared Goff, and it is not a lot of appeal here overall. I don't know if I'll be stacking this one up completely, but I do like the mini stacks. Even if you didn't even want to bring it back with anyone on Detroit, I think it's totally fine to run out Justin Jefferson and Alexander Madison together and just hope to capture like a large majority of the touches on that offense overall. So anything else on this game before we build a team?
No, I think that's pretty much it here.
Okay, perfect. I do want everyone to know some exciting news, I guess, on the channel. We're going to be actually starting a new YouTube channel. So YouTube channel number 2. So we're going to have some more clips and guest stuff over there, some exclusive picks every single week. So I could definitely use you guys' help to build that thing up. There's a link in the description. I'll take you right to it. There's probably a live link that's pinned in the chat also right now, but I would appreciate some help with that. And let's go ahead and build that team, Reeb. So this is the Listener League. We have another Listener League this year, per usual, or this week, per usual. It is a 165-person Listener League. They did make it a little bit smaller since we haven't been filling it up every week. So that's interesting, but it's still $5, still rake-free, 3 max. So let's see if we were to stack this one up. Do you want to be on the cousin side of this one, Reebs, I would imagine?
Yeah, so we can play Cousins, and
Okay.
let's just play both receivers and see if we can, because it's a
Elite double.
165 person field. Let's go
Mhm.
crazy.
I like it.
You know,
I
this
like
is,
it.
you know,
Yeah.
if it's gonna be that small, like that's when you say like we talked about playing
1650.
Josh
It's a little
Allen.
bit bigger. Yeah, 1650.
Oh,
Sorry.
16.
Yeah, I probably
Yeah.
said that wrong. Mhm.
Oh man, I thought you said yeah, it's like 165. Let's go crazy for that.
All right.
But yeah, that's you're not gonna play Josh Reynolds unless you get some real large field stuff.
Yeah, so I guess my biggest question is, do we want to bring it back with Jamal on the other
Sure,
side
yeah.
of this just to get some
Let's use
salary
his
saving?
65. Let's
Mhm.
use his 65 and just see what we have to play with.
Cool. All right,
Um,
so we still have 6K or so the rest of the way on this one. You could probably add one more to this. Like Kirk is one of those guys that I don't hesitate to even triple with like adding Conklin to that or even adding Madison in this case, but I don't think we have to start there for sure. Is there any other guys that you're, I guess, especially bullish on so far this week?
Not really in this game particularly, but before you force me to, just go ahead and throw in Dolphins defense.
Let's go. You know the drill at this point, man. It's not for me. It's for the people watching.
I
It's a
know.
lot
It's
harder
just
to figure out where we're at right now if we don't
Yep.
have a defense in there. So
Yep,
yeah,
yep.
Dolphins against Giants, no issues there.
So plug in Dolphins. They're at home too.
Mhm.
We will get them in at home.
Yep.
So let's go with
6,500 the rest of the way.
a mini I like that you possibly can check out in another video
Mhm.
that we will have on the site. And let's
Yes.
play Marquise Brown and
Mhm.
Fryermuth.
Ooh,
And
okay.
Fryermuth is questionable. He did practice yesterday, so keep in mind if he doesn't play, we'll have to pivot and go to like the island of Foster Moreau.
Mhm.
But we'll play Hollywood and Fryermuth in this one.
Fryermuth is 5,400, man. A touchdown score. He's been scoring almost every week, I think, and they just haven't moved his price.
5 touchdowns his past 5 games.
Yeah, I like that.
You get a little bit of the matchup, too, against the Ravens.
Mhm.
So let's see.
I
We've
like
got
that. So that's 6,800 the rest of the way. So we still have a ton of salary to work with. We could probably even jam in one of these elite wide receivers if we wanted to. If we wanted to go that Mixon or Eckler route, I think this would be totally fine. Or I mean, just adding Madison to this, I think would make some sense also. But I'll leave it up to you.
yeah, I don't know how much money we would have left to fill that flex, right? Like,
To say
'cause
yeah, you're right. It is probably just out of reach. So if we even played Madison, we had 5K in that last spot. So we probably do want to move down a tier. I guess if we wanted to like get crazy, I think this Washington and Las Vegas game could end up being relatively popular, but we'll see. Josh Jacobs
almost
is 7K.
I almost decided to put this one on there, but
Mhm.
I figured there's really only 2 plays that we're going to talk about in that game that I care about, and I figured we'd get to him here.
Okay.
So I was already thinking we'd get to Gibson in the flex. He's going to be super chalky. He's going to be the chalky guy.
Okay.
So we'll put him in the flex because he's a 4
Mhm.
p.m.
So 7,500 the rest of the way
Yep.
if we just threw him in the running back slot for now. So that's basically Cordero Patterson, Jamar Chase, Mike Evans, like tons of room here for sure. So is there, I guess, a guy of those that you would prefer?
Yeah, I think the guy I like here that I think is going to really get overlooked and lost in the sauce this week. I don't know if he'll come up on TJ's talking points at all, his leverage points. Is James Conner
Mm-hmm.
at 7,300 because he's going to play his first game with Kyler Murray as the feature back.
I like that.
That's I feel like that game might go overlooked a little bit. Plus the upside of just having Kyler back, if that offense comes out and is really kind of optimal. At his price range, we know he's got touchdown equity. He's been catching the football the past 3 games. Chase Edmonds is going to be out. So I feel like he's going to be pretty under-owned this weekend.
I like that one. I haven't really considered. I guess the positive is that they held Kyler out probably a week later than when he could have come back, and then they went right into the bye, right? So like he should be, I mean, as healthy as he's been in weeks. So hopefully he comes back and we can kind of get things back on track for the Cardinals. But I like the Connor call. I don't think a lot of people are going to go that way. But even just like looking at the Sims, Reeves, 5th highest frequency this week. James Conner at 7,300. So you're all over the crab so far. So I like it. Let's move on. Game number 2. We have Chargers at Bengals. Cincinnati's currently a 3-point home favorite per FanDuel Sportsbook. The over-under is sitting at 50.5, tied for the highest on the slate with Tampa Bay and Atlanta. 74% of the bets are still already on the over in this one. So, Reeves, can we expect this one to shoot out, you think?
Maybe. I mean, the Chargers, they got to give it to us, right? Like, we don't know what Chargers team we're going to get any week. It's either all or nothing with them. We're getting, like we talked about a couple weeks ago with Herbert, how he's been like the ultimate like GPP bro quarterback because he either finishes as like the QB1 or like the QB18 every week. Right. So what will we get this week? It's hard to tell because the Bengals are a team that really aren't going to blitz a lot. They're going to try to get home with 4. So that has swerved a little bit into like where Herbert has thrived, but then the Broncos didn't do that last week and it didn't help at all. Broncos didn't blitz him at all last week and he was just bad, just downright terrible. So it's an interesting matchup here because the FanDuel for the first time, it's the first time and it is week 13, they have priced Joe Mixon over 8K. The first time.
What a world, man.
Yeah, and then not only did they take him over 8K, he went to 9-4. He scored a touchdown in 8 straight games. He's got multiple touchdowns in 4 straight games. The Chargers have allowed a rushing touchdown in 7 straight games. That's the longest streak in the league. So it does seem like an optimal spot for Joe Mixon. I will say with hesitancy though, I like to look at like these team splits and their touchdowns. The past 3 weeks, the Bengals have 9 offensive touchdowns and 7 are rushing. Prior to that, it was 21 passing touchdowns to 6 rushing touchdowns. I always talk about how these things shift, right? In a season, you don't make it through where a team just is dominant, really, and like has like 80% of the touchdowns come through the air. It's very rare it happens. So Mixon's hot streak also coincides with like that regression finally happening. So we might see that thing start a little bit. The other thing with the Chargers is if you look at their season-long stats, they're terrible against the run. But since they've come out of this bye, they have now shifted. They're actually second in the NFL in loaded box frequency. They're trying to stop the run. They were 31st in the NFL prior to the bye week. We talked about this ad nauseum throughout the course of the season, right? They want to invite you to run. They're trying to, not give up big plays to the air. They've actually shifted and they're trying to stop the run. Now, like I said, they still a lot of rushing touchdowns, 7 straight games, but they have been from an efficiency stance a lot better against the run since the bye. So maybe that just helps a little bit if they devote their resources to stop the run. But here's the problem. If you devote your resources to stop the run against the Bengals, they can easily just go 3 wide on you.
Right. That was going to be my first question, right? Because we talked about them at, like you said, the whole year about like they really just don't want to give up that deep ball. They're the second best team in the league in terms of QBR against the deep ball. Do you think like with their new, I guess, like is there anything to like them kind of changing that scheme a little bit so now they are a little bit more susceptible to deep ball? Because no one's going to play Jamar Chase, I feel like, this week again.
Yeah, so if you look at some of their splits, like if you look at just their season-long wide receiver splits, they look like they're awesome still. But since they're bye the past 4 weeks, they're more middle of the pack. And we've seen receivers start to have some good games against them. Devontae Smith had 100 yards and a touchdown. Chase Claypool had 93 yards. Devontae Smith had 100 yards and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson had 143 yards against them. Because they're pulling guys in to stop the run, they're starting to give up more things downfield since they've come out of the bye. So we'll see how they approach defending the Bengals team, because now that the Bengals offensive line has kind of come alive a little bit here and they're starting to play some smash mouth football, this now is the dealer's choice. Like, how do you defend them now? This was like the missing link for the Bengals. Because now if they're able to go game script sensitive or game approach sensitive to how teams are defending them and able to just, we'll run it on you. Now, what do you do? Because they'll just go 3 wide, right? They can just go 3 wide on you if you want to stop the run, and then they'll open up. I mean, it is kind of a conundrum here now for teams defending the Bengals, and it could be trouble. We don't know going in how teams are going to defend them, so it is kind of a crapshoot for fantasy football. But it also makes them kind of almost an ironclad offense to be attached to in some capacity, because they're going to be good in all assets, right? So
Yeah, this is like almost like kind of the inverse in some ways of the Minnesota and Detroit game that we talked about. So if you haven't checked out that video, definitely do that next. But I'll say this, like, is it like Mixon versus Eckler? Like you said, the prices haven't been as close yet. Both of these guys are being used as bell cows at this point of the year. So like there's not a lot of bell cows standing at this point, but they're both looking pretty good in the Sims right now. But the guy, as we kind of transition over to LA, that I wanted to get your take on was actually Keenan Allen, because we're giving away, I don't know if you know this, Reeves, we're giving away a giant Keenan Allen photo this week. So I'll show it on screen right now for you guys to see this. But yeah, so basically if you check out my Twitter, you'll be able to get in on that giveaway. And we're actually going to be doing this. I'm trying to think of the exact day I'll be giving it away. But just go to my Twitter. It's a pinned tweet. Pretty easy. You just have to like and retweet the tweet. Fill out the Pristine auction form. Obviously, this all comes from Pristine Auction. And then you have to sub to the new YouTube channel. And then you'll be entered to win that giant Keenan Allen thing, which I think is pretty sweet. But yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on that side of the ball in this game for sure.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that brings good touchdown fortune to Keenan Allen, because he only has 2 touchdowns on the year and only 4 end zone targets. But he's been a target succubus again. I mean, he's got double-digit targets in 5 straight games. The only thing that's really hurt him is that he's just not scoring touchdowns, on FanDuel. The Bengals are more susceptible in the middle of the field than in terms of downfield stuff too. So it does kind of fit the corollary of where we would want to play him. I think it's a good matchup for him. Same thing with Austin Eckler. I mean, the Bengals are a team, like we said, they don't try to give up a lot of big stuff. It's why they've given up production to slot receivers, tight ends, and running backs. Running backs especially have really damaged them. They're 30th in receiving points allowed per game to running backs. So definitely a good spot for Eckler. He only has more than 12 rushing attempts in one of his past 6 games.
That's true.
Just really doing it a lot through the air too as well.
Almost like the old like Kamara role, right, where we'd see it almost like split directly down the middle. But man, that was like still super valuable for fantasy, because he was still getting all of the high equity touches around the goal line, right? So yeah, Eckler, like if you're just looking at his box score, you'd be like, oh, okay, like maybe his volume isn't as crazy as it seems, but he's getting all the stuff that matters.
Yeah, touchdowns especially.
Yeah, that too.
He's got 7 rushing touchdowns and 7 receiving touchdowns, which is pretty wild. And it's just really like the Chargers have just kind of really froze us out of Big Mike, man. Like he's just not getting the overall volume. He hasn't seen 20% of the team targets in any of his past 6 games. They're not taking any downfield shots at all. They've become like a really low ADOT team. And we don't really have to chase. Like it's different when we're playing guys like T Higgins weekly, because all the peripherals are lining up, right?
Yep.
Like with Mike, there's just no peripherals that tell us like he's a smash. Like he's just not getting a lot of targets. Where are the air yards? Where are these things? They're they just evaporated.
It's crazy because of how much success they were having, right? Like, how do you just completely abandon something that's working that well? Because like we all thought that it might like come back. He was a little bit banged up for a little bit too. There's all these like excuses you could make for why this wasn't working, right? But it just really never came back.
My co-host on the Sharp Angles podcast, Dan Pizzuta, believes it's because they've had to use him as a strictly deep threat because they have no other deep threats on the roster. Like they have no other speed. They have no other wide receiver speed or downfield options. So they've had to use him in that capacity. Because Josh Palmer's been playing more snaps, and Josh Palmer's not that guy. So as Josh Palmer's been playing more snaps, they've had to use Mike Williams to just go downfield and run guys off. But because Mike Williams isn't necessarily like a burner as a downfield guy, he's more of a clasher, like a 50-50 jump ball winning guy. It's hurt him because he's not a separator, right? So he's not getting open on those routes either. So it's hurt him from getting those targets, and it's removed him from getting like those intermediate targets that in the beginning of the year existed when he was in the quote unquote like Michael Thomas role, the Joel Barton Michael Thomas role. So I don't know how much truth there is to that, but it inherently does make some sense because the Chargers just they have no other vertical player on this team. So it does think that he's been kind of pigeonholed and kind of archetyped into that role. Once again, here we are with Big Mike, but there's just no targets for him. Like, where are the targets? Where's the things for us to latch onto? Where's the meat on the bone for us?
I'm with you. It's a weird. This game's kind of weird, Reeves. Like I think there's like some stuff to latch onto here, but you can poke some holes in a lot of these guys, and the prices are very expensive. One of the prices that stood out, at least, like I mean, if we want to go back to T Higgins, he just got there for us. He's 6,600. He's like one of the cheapest guys in this game that we could go to potentially. Like I don't know, man. Like Eckler's 9K. Mike Williams obviously is still in that price range. I guess Mike Williams versus T Higgins. If we're trying to figure out one of those guys to go to, it's probably T Higgins, right? Like I don't know. Maybe I have bias because of last week.
Well, I mean, people think like Higgins, we were just chasing him like Robbie Anderson. Higgins was actually good prior to, like, he was giving us like wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 fringe weeks. He didn't give us the ceiling weeks. it wasn't like we were blindly just chasing air yards.
Which we
He
will
was
do at
still
times.
like being a usable player.
Yeah.
I actually do have one intriguing guy to float by you here,
Okay.
and it's Tyler Boyd. Because of the way the defense of the Chargers is structurally set up, they give up a lot of interior and stuff to tight ends. But the Bengals have already shown us like they're not going to give CJ Uzomah a lot of targets.
Right.
He's had these 2 spike weeks, but he doesn't get a lot of targets ever.
Mm-hmm.
So is there some signal here like this could be a matchup that Tyler Boyd can take advantage of? He's the guy that really isn't our type of guy, but I do wonder if it is a spot for him to kind of, 2 weeks ago he had 29% of the team targets. I do wonder if this is another zone-based defense like the Raiders were, that it could be another spot for him to kind of be like de facto tight end. When people look at like Chargers versus tight ends, it might be a spot to say, well, this could be Tyler Boyd getting those targets in that area of the field.
I'll tell you how I would use the Boyd play. It would be one of those teams that has one of the chalkier stacks late. So maybe you end up attacking some of the Rams players, whatever it may be, and you take a shot on Tyler Boyd with your 1 p.m. lineup. Maybe it's a mini stack with Austin Eckler or Keenan Allen or something like that, because you're automatically going to differentiate from the chalk in this game with a unique piece. And if you just happen to hit on that one piece of Cincinnati that hits, and then all the Burrow stacks are completely dead because they've got Jamar Chase, they've got even Joe Mixon, that sort of thing. I think that's how you separate. So it's like all this stuff to me is based on what type of lineup they would fit in. That would be kind of how I would approach using Boyd, like someone that we probably wouldn't really play, but I mean, he's going to be sub 5%. So I think that's how I would use him for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. He's not typically, he's a guy you'd play on the other site, but he is kind of a guy that's intriguing, I think, for stacking this game.
The other site. I love when you say that. Speaking of the other site, we're going to build a FanDuel team today. This is a Joe Hulk Show listener league. But before we do that, I want everyone to pause this video. Let me know in the comments your favorite Week 13 stack. We want to hear from you guys. Let's build a game stack around Cincinnati and LA Chargers for this one. So we want to go the Herbert side or the Burrow side. Reeves, this is your team.
Yeah, I think with them being road dogs, we go the Herbert side. And,
Okay.
Obviously it's boom or bust, but, that's what we're here for.
I like it. So we going Keenan on this one. Have we given up on Mike Williams, you think? Or is he one of those guys
I don't think
that would fit on a
we've
boat?
given it up, but like I said, there's just not a lot of peripherals.
What's
to
the
kinda make
upside?
me
Yeah.
Say, like, I want, they're not giving us a reason to play him.
Sure.
Basically is what I'm saying. Like, it's really, if you want to play Mike Williams, you're being contrarian against everything, right? You're just playing him to play him. There's nothing that they're giving. There's like no matchup advantage. There's no usage side things from the Chargers. Like, you're really just chasing. So, I mean, you could get there. I mean, he's still out there running routes. So you could get there. But I mean, as far as like stacking this game, I think we would go Herbert, Keenan, and Eckler.
Yes, I was just going to say, I think this is a build we would put Eckler on. And then I think that the decision here is if we really want to blow everything at the running back position and bring it back with Mixon, or maybe we try out Boyd on the other side of these stacks as well. I would say we probably don't have the salary to do Mixon or Chase, but I think either of those bring backs would be okay on the Cincinnati side with T or
Let's
with
just see
Boyd.
what it looks like with Boyd then, because we brought him up, and I like to at least build. I always like to build the lineups of things we talk about.
I love that.
The listeners don't have to do it, but it at least gives them a
anyone that's watching this later in the week, just keep in mind that we did build this on Thursday. These are just kind of ideas how to use this stuff that we're talking through for the specific game. If you did want to build around it in DFS, like this is something that you should definitely be using your own touch on throughout Sunday and whatnot. So defense, Reeves, do we want to, I guess we played the Chargers, or no, we played on the Dolphins on the last one. I think the Chargers are reasonable on the other side as well, but is there a cheaper defense this week that you've been kind of throwing into placeholder teams? Like I've been kind of defaulting to the Chargers for the most part.
Yeah, mostly just the Dolphins is as low as I've been going.
Okay. Let's just toss them in there for now. Again, these are not lineups that people are going to be trolling out anyways, I would think.
I think they're going to be the most popular, so you might want to get away from in tournaments too. I mean, it might maybe a week where you just pay up for like the Colts or something.
Sure. Okay. 6,400 the rest of the way with 4 slots left. So what are you thinking?
All right. So let's do a mini from one of our previous videos that you can check out. And let's do Jefferson and Jamal Williams.
Nice. I like that. I was going to say maybe Madison on this team, but I think I like the mini with Jefferson and Williams a lot just because that really helps with the price. I think Jamal is going to be really popular, obviously, at that price point, but just adding Jefferson to it, I think might differentiate it a little bit. So we have a lot of 1 p.m. players here, all 1 p.m. players. So in the 4 p.m. game, we have a tight end to fill. We also have a flex. So Tight end wise, we could try and figure out. Oh, I probably don't have the salary to put Kittle in this. We could go with your boy Freiermuth again. Try and see where that
Well, I
leads
think
us.
we've got enough salary to probably just run another 4 p.m. mini, and we can do the island of Foster Moreau and Gibson, and
We could. I don't hate
we've
that.
got a lot of
God,
correlation.
this Gibson, this Foster Moreau thing is one of the ones that's gonna absolutely kill me this week, I think. But Gibson, yeah, that fits perfectly.
He
man.
actually on FanDuel, I don't think will be as chalky as the other site. That
Yeah,
he's
you could
super
be right.
cheap.
You could be
I
right.
think on FanDuel, because you have Freiermuth right above him,
Mhm.
right? And you know we're in touchdown or bust territory of these tight ends, anyways.
Sure.
But I mean, I think there's a strong argument. I mean, we didn't talk about this game, but last time that Darren Waller missed a game in Week 7, he played 100% of snaps, didn't come off the field. He caught a touchdown in the game. He's got some end zone equity. So I mean, It's a touchdown or bust play on FanDuel, really.
Yeah, that was the
He's
move
gonna be
that I
on the
wasn't
field.
willing to make in that week that you're talking about, but a lot of sharp people did take that chance. So let's go ahead and keep this thing moving, Reeves. Game number 3, we have Steelers at Ravens. Baltimore is a -4.5 point road favorite per FanDuel Sportsbook. This game features the third lowest over-under on the slate at just 44 points, which was a bit surprising to me. Seems like the sharps and the public seem to be in on the Ravens here, even on the road. But where would you land on this one, Reeves?
Yeah, I mean, I've been shorting the Steelers kind of all season, but I can see. So this game is not going to be for the faint of heart if you're playing this game.
Sure.
This is a 4 p.m. Could be terrible. This game could be 16-10. It could be 13-10. It could be terrible, or maybe it gets in the mid-20s. I
Right.
mean, the Ravens are a defense that give up huge plays. They're very, kind of all over the place. They're very on and off, all or nothing in game. And then offensively, they've been terrible the last 3 weeks. There's just
Mhm.
no way around it. I mean, they have 3 offensive touchdowns on 35 drives. Lamar didn't start one of those games, but they've been awful. But the Steelers defense is really just coming into this game, just hanging on a thread right now. TJ Watt's not going to play in this game. Joe Hayden looks like he might miss this game. They have been absolutely getting steamrolled the past couple weeks. The Chargers put up 41 points on them. The Bengals put up 41 points on them. This defense is not the Steelers defense that you grew up with.
Right.
Have experience. Like they have too many injuries, too many guys in the lineups. They just are not playing well. So there is some opportunity for maybe some flop lag for the Ravens offense to get some of this early season spark when Lamar was averaging 9 yards per pass attempt and has been bad. So this is going to be an all or nothing game. Like this is what I like about this game from a tournament perspective, though, and why I wanted to talk about it and build lineups around it is because it could be gross, man. This could be awful, but it's not a catch.
you won't see. So if we run the Sims on this, runthesims.com/Holga, 10% off, all that stuff, but you don't see really any of this game in the Sims, right? It probably has a decent amount to do with like the lower total also, but like we see some of these games end up being like really unique pieces that you can build around, right? Like put chalk around a skinny stack of this game or a mini stack of this game, and if you end up hitting on just this game not being gross, right, you can really differentiate in that way. Or maybe the whole slate's gross again, Reeves. Like it's I guess one of those years where the scoring is down across the board. We saw Michael Leone take down the Thunderdome last week with a Big Ben stack. So if the slate is completely gross, sometimes finding just a different game than the field that doesn't completely go nuts when all the chalk is really condensed, like that is kind of what we're trying to do here, Reeves, in tournaments, is be different. So I don't mind this stack. I don't mind this game. I just think this is one of those ones I'd want to build the best plays around, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too is keep in mind like what fields you're placing like these lineups in.
Exactly.
Know when you don't need 200 points to win a tournament.
Right.
Yep.
Like yeah, I should preface that the Leone one I'm talking about, it's 50 people, right? So it's very small. That's the stuff that a lot of the people that watch these I think play anyways, just because I think those are the best ones.
People are like, this lineup didn't score this many points. It's like, yeah,
what does that matter? It's not built for that.
Well, remember 2 weeks ago when you won your tournament and Jonathan Taylor had 50 points.
Yeah.
You can't win a large field tournament without Jonathan Taylor, but small field.
Yeah, and even the lineup that I built that was like a complete onslaught of that game, it wasn't built to even beat probably 1,000 people. It was built to beat like 100 or less, right? So you got to think about which types of lineups you're building and what it suits, right? So I think that's something that like we'll talk about that, and people just probably like roll their eyes at us at this point, Reeves. But like honestly, like there's tons of edges left, and that is one of the biggest ones. Build lineups for specific contests. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean most people that I talk to that get into like single entry stuff or 3-max stuff, they still get into these tournaments where you still need to shoot for like having 180 to 200 point upside, right? Like, so you still have to construct your teams that way. People think it's like, no.
The single entry part of it is completely irrelevant, right? And I know that's the point you're making, right? The field size is what matters. Doesn't matter if it's 3 max, doesn't matter if it's single entry. Like, you could play like any of these. Like, there's tons of single entry contests that will have 5,000 people in them. You're still not building it like a single entry. You're building it like a 5,000 person tournament. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
correct.
All right.
Correct.
Anything else in this game stand out?
Yeah, I mean, well, so there are some pieces there, like I said. I mean, well, the Steelers, like I said, they've been getting absolutely steamrolled. They've been awful against the run, but if obviously we don't want to play any of these running backs, Lamar's is the best running back still the Ravens have. Devontae Freeman's been solid, but when he doesn't score a touchdown, he's been pretty worthless. So he's basically been a touchdown or bust fantasy option. You saw it touch Latavius Murray 17-8, but I am interested in Hollywood here, because what's happened is the deep ball's dried up in a similar capacity that's happened for Jamar Chase, right? You've got this player that just lived on deep targets early in the season and thrived on connecting on those. And variance kind of now has swung in the other direction because they are low leverage targets. And we've seen it happen with Jamar Chase. And we've seen it happen with Hollywood Brown. The past 3 games Lamar Jackson played, he's 3 of 18 passing on throws 15 yards or further downfield. Previously, he had connected on 47%, which was top 8 in the league. But Hollywood is still just getting jammed with targets. Look at his targets each game. Even last week when the deep ball is there, he still caught 8 of 10 targets. They just moved the targets in. He has 14, 12, 13, and 10 targets his past 4 games. 32% of the team targets over the past 4 games he's played. They've actually relegated Bateman on Sunday night. He only ran a route on 58% of the team dropbacks. That's
surprising.
To kind of like stump some of his like little buzz that he's been going, that he had going for him. I mean, Rashawn Bateman's had a very different NFL season on the field than NFL Twitter has perceived it.
Sure,
it's still been very positive, but he's just not getting a lot of targets and they're not using him a lot. He's been good when they do throw to him. And I think that's what's popping. And people are like, well, he should get more targets. But the Ravens have not leaned into that at all. They are still just throwing the ball to Hollywood and Mark Andrews. That's all they're doing. The interesting thing about Mark Andrews, and we would never fade Mark Andrews because of like any matchup or anything, but he's never scored a touchdown against the Steelers. They are only allowing a 2.7% touchdown rate to opposing tight ends. That's 4th. That's not going to move us off of anything on Andrews, but it does. And circling back to the deep ball thing, before I got off track there, as I'm prone.
That's all right. I drove us even further off the bridge on that one, so it's all good.
Well, the Steelers are actually bad against deep ball. We said they might not have Joe Hayden here. So maybe we can get some regression to kind of kick back in, right? For Hollywood. They're 27th in completion rate allowed on those targets. And they've allowed a touchdown on those targets in each of the last 3 games. So maybe we can catch a little Hollywood flop lag. If you check out another stack in an earlier video, we did run a Hollywood mini in there too as well.
Yeah, and we know that like it's a good matchup on the other side too for deep balls. Baltimore gives up a ton of big plays, like you said, but Big Ben's not pushing it down the field, so it doesn't even matter. Looks like Reeves might have froze on us there. Reeves, are you there? Reeves. Let's see if we can get Reeves back. If not, we can go through this as a group. Look at this. Should just poke Reeves. Reeves, let's go. All right, I'll see if I can get him back. This has to be edited either way. Now I'm dropping stuff. Let's see. All right, let's I'm gonna try and get Reeves back here, guys. Be back in hopefully minute, 2 minutes. Maybe Reeves' hamster wheel internet is completely done. Not sure, but I'll be back in a sec. All right, we are back. Little technical difficulty. Thank you, guys, for that. But before we build a lineup, I am going to bug you guys one last time to take 30 seconds out of your day to subscribe to the new YouTube channel. But also, if you want to help me move this show forward, ratethispodcast.com/The Joe Holka Show. It would mean the absolute world. Building up the podcast is not easy, so I could appreciate anything that you guys can do on the ratings and review side of things. Reeves, let's go ahead and build a lineup here. This one will be, I guess if you choose it, will be in the listener league at FanDuel.com/Holka. So we're talking through Baltimore and Pittsburgh. I assume we're not playing Big Ben, but I mean, I'll leave that up to you, man. It was good enough for Leone last week.
Yeah, it was. No. Yeah, listen, this game was so exciting that it just
Everyone fell asleep and I had to start over. Yeah,
just froze it out. Take that as a sign for everybody, building the lineup.
That hasn't happened all year, knock on wood. So yeah, maybe that's the sign that this game is just a complete dumpster. Who knows?
But yeah, we would start with Lamar,
Right.
Lamar and Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can run it back with, I believe, Chase Claypool.
Okay.
Deontay Johnson also fine, but we talked about with this Ravens defense, we didn't talk about the Steelers side at all, but
Sure.
they're a complete pass funnel. They just nuke the run, but they give up chunk plays in the passing game when they do give up plays. And we know Deontay's going to get his, that he lives that life. But if we're chasing a chunk play, it's going to be, from Claypool. And he actually does have 21% of team targets each of the past 2 games, and has kind of gotten there the past 2 weeks from a yardage perspective. We just need that touchdown.
You have any interest in Najee at 8K? Like, he's one of those guys that's priced all the way up that I've been kind of skipping over, but not for like a super good reason, to be honest.
I mean, we talked about this particularly a couple weeks ago, and Jake came on after me and told me I was wrong about Dave Montgomery. I do not like playing running backs against the Ravens. They sell out to stop the run. It could lead to a big play, but like you've seen it even on Sunday night, they nuked the Browns running game. Like a way more elite rushing game. And the Steelers have been terrible running the football of late. And we thought this would be a problem early in the season, and we're like, oh no, Najee's getting so much volume, it doesn't matter. But look at like Najee the past couple weeks though. Like he got into the box against the Chargers, which saved him. After one of those, it was either a block punt or pass interference. He got the 1-yard touchdown, but they have been horrendous running the football lately. And I just don't know if they're going to get anything going on the ground in this game.
Yeah, like I said, like there's really not a lot of players in the Sims right now. Najee at 8K is certainly nowhere near the top when there's a lot of decent options this week at running back. So I'm fine leaving that the way it is. We could double Lamar with Andrews, but I'm fine rolling with just the skinny stack.
Yeah, we'll just
one.
Go small here because this is one, if you said we want to play maybe with some chalkier items in the early games.
I'm going to force us to do one thing, though, because we haven't done this yet on the other games we've gone over. I do want to play Alexander Madison on this team. He's 8,700. He's expensive, but against Detroit, I think he's in an absolutely smash spot. So we're going to have to go with some value here. I'm going to go ahead and toss in our Dolphins defense placeholder because they're kind of a mid-range defense. There'll be some stuff throughout the week ownership-wise. I think we can make a better decision later on. So 6,300 the rest of the way. Yeah, or Sony, right? So like, yeah, if you keep an eye on that, that's a nice salary saver right there that gets you up to some studs, definitely. But 6,300 the rest of the way. Do we want to GM in Kittle on this team? I think Kittle is one of those guys that like I have weird blinders for because every time I play Kittle, he's absolutely terrible. Just paying up for tight end hasn't gone very well for Joe this year across the board. But man, no Debo, like Kittle against Seattle. I don't know. Maybe that game gets gross, but I like having that slot open at 4 p.m. because then I could always move to Freiermuth or something like that if things get weird.
Yeah, you can. I mean, that's the thing about this stack in particular too. You don't even have to like this game when you can get there, but look at all the salary we have to move around if we need it.
True.
I mean, we've got tons of movement here that we have at our disposal for late swapping. So if Madison doesn't hit, we're chasing. I mean, we're already way off the beaten path though. That's the only thing.
Yeah, so if we're like pretty far off the beaten path, is there a mini stack maybe at 1 p.m. that you like where we wouldn't have to worry as much about playing some chalk? Like I think like early in the week, I think we've talked a little bit about Antonio Gibson being pretty popular on this slate. I still think that like David Montgomery, people are going to go back to that. Well, maybe people will chase the Leonard Fournette touchdowns. Jamal Williams at 1 p.m. is going to be very popular, but we already have Madison on this team. So is there a mini that you like? I'm fine running the Antonio Gibson one again if that's your preference.
I mean, as far as minis go, I think everything's kind of one-sided early. Like my favorite mini probably in the early one is, like I said, if you're gonna do like Jefferson and Jamal Williams. We've done that on a couple rosters that we've built so far, just because he's so cheap. It's funny with Leonard Fournette, we're in the same exact spot we were last week, right? Like,
Yeah.
you've got Brady's
you think Brady's going to be chalky again?
Yeah. I mean, how could he not be? I mean,
against Atlanta.
Against Atlanta, who's been so bad against opposing quarterbacks, they don't rush the passer.
It fails for people last week, and now people don't even care, man. It's the worst. Like, it's literally where we're at right now. Like, a couple years ago, we used to be able to just like print money with playing Brady, like after like a flop lag game like that. So that's rough, man. But you're right. He's probably gonna be the most like popular quarterback now that I'm looking at deeper.
Yeah, Brady's gonna be super popular again, and you'll see Evans and Godwin bring backs, and we could play like one of those guys if you want to play a receiver, a Tampa Bay receiver. We could play Godwin.
We could. I think I'm trying to think of like Godwin versus Evans this week, ownership wise. Like I still think that Evans is always going to be lower though, right? I think it's always like the safer thing to go with Godwin. They're like basically the same price. Let's go with Evans just because I think that like the touchdown score, like it's easier for my brain to wrap my head around that. We could probably, we can't fit in Cordero on this team. We definitely need some salary saving the rest of the way now. So we could play Jamal. We could just play Sony as a placeholder too. But is there another running back on the cheaper side that you like besides those guys?
Did you stick Kittle on this team or no?
Kittle is for now, but he doesn't have to be.
I was going to say we could go down to either Freiermuth on the other side and run it, but it would give us 2 Steelers, or we could just go to the Foster Moreau thing again.
We could. I mean, that's the Foster Moreau thing is still totally fine, right? Because all you need is that touchdown there. And I like I said, like paying up for tight end has not gone well for Joe this year.
Well,
so
he's also another 4 p.m. player that you could just blow this thing up if you had to.
Well, we got the 1 p.m. players that we have. Like we still have Madison Chalk. We have Mike Evans. So yeah, we probably need to find at least one more lower owned play at 1 p.m. I would imagine. So.
We do need another one-off for sure on this team particularly because we need to know if it hits or not.
Exactly.
But the problem is it's not going to be a running back because we can't fit any of them in.
Well, we can fit in Cordero Patterson if we're willing to go to 5,400 in the flex, because then we'd have our mini with Evans and Cordero Patterson. And Patterson's not going to be owned. Always, he's never owned.
Yeah, he is never owned against the Bucks though. But
I mean,
right.
it's not.
I talk myself out of Cordero Patterson every week, and every week he gets there. So you're right.
We don't have to. I'm just saying it's an option. It does handcuff us a little bit if we do that, though. There's really not a ton. So is there like a guy that'd be a little bit cheaper than that at running back? So 7,400 for Cordero Patterson. We could go with like a Saquon Barkley mini. He's 7,200. We could kind of flip the build a little bit for the Raiders and just play Jacobs and Moreau together. I just feel like that's kind of negatively correlated if we need a touchdown for Moreau. So probably wouldn't go that way. David Montgomery, go back to that well again, I guess, with him failing last week, but the snaps and stuff were there. Myles Gaskin against the Giants, 6,400. That's kind of the range. Unless we just go Gibson again with Moreau. Which
it would seem like because we're so far off the chalk that you could take Gibson and you can play him. But
let's do that because then 6,600 the discussion becomes if we want to play Jamal with Madison, if we wanted to play David Montgomery in that range, or we just roll it back with T Higgins and hope no one plays him again.
Yeah, I mean, we could do T Higgins as a one-off and leave Claypool in the flex, and then you can blow everything up.
All right, let's go with that for now. I got to get you out of here, Reeves. I will remind everyone that they should be checking out sharpfootballanalysis.com. They've been generous enough to give our listeners a 30% site-wide coupon code, so definitely check that out. Rich30 at checkout. We went a little bit over, but no worries, Reeves. I appreciate you, and we'll see you next week, my man.
All right, beautiful.
See ya. We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. Locks of the week, position by position. These are the players that we have to have exposure to in NFL Week 13, bringing it all together at the end as we try and build the optimal DFS lineup live. But it wouldn't be Locks of the Week without my good buddy from The Athletic, BetsTV. You guys know him on Twitter at AllInKid. Jake Ciely, how we living, brother?
We're doing good. I had a good Thanksgiving, as you know. We went back and forth on that, which, by the way, everybody can smash the like for Reeves not getting it right. I didn't say he was wrong. I said David Montgomery could be interesting because players average over 4 yards per carry, which he did. He just didn't get the volume. We were hoping for the big play, and we pivoted off of him anyway, if you watched the entire episode. So, Reeves, you're wrong. I still love you.
Yeah, I'm going to at some point just drag you guys in together so you guys can have this out. You guys are basically battling this entire year in this listener league contest, yet you guys never get to defend yourselves, man. That's probably not right. So,
but if everybody remembers, we came off of that and put in Jacobs as the big time pivot, and that hit big. The Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs hit big. We had Schultz too. It was a good Thursday.
Things have been going well, man. I know we were kind of messaging throughout Thanksgiving to see where these teams landed. Some of the large field stuff, it wasn't quite good enough, but I think a lot of the small field stuff, the lineup that we built on this stream, did really well. Jake's been on a little bit of a heater, so let's keep this thing moving and not waste any more time. Quarterback locks of the week. We got two guys for you. Jalen Hurts is 8K at the New York Jets. We have Derek Carr 7,500 versus the Washington football team. Let's start with Jalen, Jake. Why do you like him? I guess paying up, but man, the Jets are just absolutely awful. So that's got to be part of it, right?
Yeah, the last time they haven't had a quarterback throw 2 touchdowns or more against them, week 4. And that was Ryan Tannehill back with Derrick Henry. And then before that was Teddy, Mac Jones, and I think they played the Jets in week 1. Or not Jets. I was thinking Sam Darnold, Carolina in week 1.
Okay.
But since then, 2+ touchdowns every single game. Yes, it is the Jets. We just saw the fact that Tyrod had not a great game, but he did throw 2 touchdowns and hit Brandon Cooks in the back of the end zone. And I think he only threw for 150, 160 yards, but that's more than what Jalen Hurts can do. And then it's the rushing upside. Yeah, top of it. That's really why. And I love the fact, as you know, I love to attack players coming off bad games when everybody's ticked off and don't want to go back to them. I expect Jalen Hurts to be in a nice spot, and I'll probably have a couple lineups with a Jalen Hurts, Devonta Smith stack. I think it just goes hand in hand, obviously. But you could play naked Jalen Hurts, honestly.
You could. Yeah, I've been a little bit frustrated with just where the price has gone. Naked hurts. I've been a little bit frustrated with the price point on Devonta Smith. Now he's 6,300, so I think that makes at least a little bit more sense. But I guess curious what your thoughts are pairing him with Goddard. Goddard does feel like the guy that just hasn't quite gotten there. In theory, the opportunity should be good. You're looking at things even just snaps, routes, percentage of routes, that sort of thing. But the problem is there's just no volume in the passing game, right? So I struggle with all of these guys at this point.
There's no volume, and there doesn't seem to be a really great connection either. Just the rapport doesn't seem to be hitting there. It's different than Jalen Reagor, who's its own fault because Jalen Reagor keeps dropping all those passes. And actually, Jalen Hurts would have had a great game if not for Reagor. But it really comes down to he doesn't turn to him as much as we would think he was going to once Ertz was out of the equation. So, yeah, I've been pretty much off Goddard, especially because the price still hasn't. If Goddard got down to high 4,000, 5,000 range, maybe, but there's no real appeal there too, because what's the upside of Goddard actually even catching 2 touchdowns? That's the volume's not going to be to offset with, you're not going to get Goddard for 100 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely on the Devonta side if I had to pick one. I guess another feather in that cap is the Jets are actually the 5th worst team at defending the deep ball if we're just looking at efficiency. So I think that it could be a Devonta game in theory. But let's talk a little bit more about Derek Carr, because I think this Washington and Raiders game might be reasonably popular now that we have kind of a deep threat again for the Raiders. Derek Carr in an amazing spot. And I guess on paper, we're just talking about teams that give up a lot of deep balls. Washington's the worst team in the league at defending the deep ball, right? So you never know. I mean, Derek Carr earlier in the year was willing to do that. So is that part of this?
That's part of it. The Deshaun Jackson addition offsets the loss that they had earlier, which, has done a little bit for Bryan Edwards, but really what it comes down to as well. And when we get to tight end, there's an obvious name there, but that's actually not where I'm going at tight end, hint, hint. But, with Foster Moreau, with no Darren Waller, and the situation here, you expect a little bit more lean towards the receivers. And if Deshaun Jackson, all he takes is 1 pass to get. I'm not saying play Deshaun Jackson. That's big time tournament. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if after Thanksgiving, his ownership might not represent a good spot to try and play him in a big tournament. You're going to have to watch that one. I expect it to be too high, honestly. But that's the appeal here is Derek Carr. I said this at the beginning of the year for seasonal, Joe, is that Derek Carr, people got this bad perception that Derek Carr's a terrible deep ball thrower because he wasn't connecting with Henry Ruggs last year and they were missing their spots and they just weren't on the same page. He's been middle of the road to above, like slightly above middle of the road, like top half of the pack as a deep ball thrower. He's a very good deep ball thrower this year. So as you just mentioned, you hit this against them, and if you're looking to save money, you get down to this Joe Burrow range, which that Chargers defense is so hit or miss, just like the Bengals, honestly, in that game. You could have one game where they give up 40, the next game they give up 10. Yep. But if you're looking for to buy down on this, Derek Carr, Deshaun Jackson, Foster Moreau, but again, I think that's going to be a very popular one. This is going to be watch the ownership.
Yeah. Let's move on to running backs. There's a lot of guys to talk about this week. So
there's many running backs this week. I like, and then we just lost 2 big ones.
Yeah, I know, and exactly. We were just talking about the price point for Madison too. He would have been the same price as Dalvin, so they priced him all the way up. Yet he's still popping as one of the best running backs in the entire slate. But yeah, we're gonna talk about Joe Mixon first. Let's start at the top end, and then we'll move down in tiers. So 9,400. We were just talking about Joe Burrow and this Chargers defense. The Chargers were a team that you really want to run against. Recently, they've been kind of selling out to stop the run. I guess it hasn't been working so well. But yeah, tell us why you like Joe Mixon.
It still hasn't been selling out. Like even with the selling out, it still hasn't been very effective. And I even looked back and went back to week 7, so the second half of the year to date. So week 7 through 12, they're still averaging the second most yards per carry against. Only surprisingly, the Steelers leading the way at 5.38 yards per carry. The expected EPA, rush EPA for them, they're still 10th or 11th. And then they're still allowing a lot after. The biggest thing is that it's after contact. They still can't get anybody after contact. So they're selling. This is the thing for perception as well. Both seasonal and DFS, you hear, he's facing an 8-man box. Emory Hunt, who was a college running back and was one of the best scouts in the game, has always said this. Running backs actually really like 8-man boxes. They don't like the pounding they take when they have it, but they like it because you make one guy miss and you're gone yards after the contact. So yeah, that's what you're really looking for here. And I think Joe Mixon, I said it to you 2 weeks ago because we weren't talking about him Thanksgiving, but the most underrated running back because of fatigue. I think you were the one that said the fatigue word. Yeah. We just got kind of tired of waiting for Joe Mixon, but Joe Mixon, if you're going to buy up this week, Jonathan Taylor at 10.5, that's tough to get in there. But if you don't want Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon.
Yeah, just looking at the Sims here.
Jonathan Taylor still pops. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, man, it's just really hard to get away from the workload that he has. But I think that's probably part of it too, with Alexander Madison still at 8,700 being the top optimal rate running back. But like Joe Mixon, I have no problem going back to him whatsoever. Like one of the true bell cows, regardless of game script that we have, Joe Mixon, Austin Eckler in this game. Also, I think Eckler might even be a little bit more popular, but maybe not because of the matchup. Let's move on to another guy we've been discussing a little bit Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on, I want to come back. We do have recency from Chubb and Najee Harris recently against the Lions.
True.
And the Lions are not good, but they're not as bad as people think against the run. And that's why I'm actually kind of off Madison for the price. Like if he was still in the 7,000 range, because I want to differentiate. Madison, as you said, he pops in the lineup. He's going to pop in every optimizer there is out there. Everybody's going to be on him for warranted reasons.
When he got there for weeks for people, right? People remember that stuff.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yep.
And I've been reading a lot of beat reporters are saying the same thing. Like you and I talked about this in the preseason too, and I talked about with Pat Mayo too. Is like when one beat reporter says something, it's kind of like, okay, let me see whatever. When multiple start saying the same thing, and I've seen a lot start to say that Kirk Cousins could pass more going forward. Look for KJ Osborne to get a little bit more involved, Tyler Conklin to get a little bit more involved. And I'm just saying, all I'm saying is if Madison comes out of this game and only gets 17 touches, that's, again, not a bad day, but it might not be the smash people are expecting.
Yeah, I mean, moving down in price to someone like Antonio Gibson, like we're going to talk about right now, 6,200 for him. Like that seems like the play, right? Tell us why you like him.
Because of the volume, they're just gonna ride him until his leg snaps in half. If it's not 100% now, which I would assume by his workload it is 100%. But you want to talk about workload of the Jonathan Taylor realm, and then we still have J.D. McKissic questionable. Even if he plays, they've been just riding Antonio Gibson. And what do we know? Now, you talked about the Chargers earlier. The one thing that hasn't changed about the Raiders is they have a pretty good secondary, but you run on the Raiders. Devontae Booker a few weeks ago ran on the Raiders. You just run on them. And if Washington's looking to try and win this game, it's not going to be actually with Terry McLaurin and Tyler Haneke because, again, I mentioned that secondary has been better than people realize. It's with Antonio Gibson at 6,200. That feels like somebody was asleep at the wheel on FanDuel.
Dude, he had 36 touches last week, and he's still. I don't understand why that. Like, how can he be priced there? It just doesn't make any sense. Even 36. If you just
that's not even what was that? That's not even like 50 cents a touch. Like,
yeah, I get what you mean. That's absolutely crazy. So I think that he'll be a guy that people will gravitate towards for sure. We had some mini stacks with Foster Moreau. If you wanted to go a little bit cheaper at tight end this week, I think that's interesting. So if we go up a little bit from there, I think the more popular guy in that range could potentially be Jamal Williams. I could be totally wrong on that, but he's 6,500. So let's talk about him before we get to your last guy.
So yeah, Jamal Williams was kind of everybody's going to get down to the 6,000 and see Antonio Gibson. And I just don't think a lot of people are going to stop on Jamal Williams unless they're fading Taylor, Madison, mix it like all of it. They're just going to go low price because Gibson is sitting there. So if you go Gibson Williams, you open yourself up to a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of people, if they're only doing one or the other, they're just going to see Gibson and be like, well, I'll just save the $300. Why even go to Jamal Williams?
Yep.
The other problem is, here's the downside of Jamal Williams, and this is why I wouldn't do it in a small field or a cash game, is there's no guarantee that he gets the Swift workload. And the fact that you don't have, I'm not going to try and pronounce his last name, the safety get involved that's now a running back, or even Jamar Jefferson, who flashed earlier this year, and we don't have a full-blown committee because, what do we know? Two things, Anthony Lynn and Jamal Williams hasn't been 100% this year. Now, if he gets 70% of the work, it's a smash spot for that money. So this is another one. This is one where I'm going to watch. If you keep this single-digit ownership percentage, then I'll be on Williams on a few lineups. If not, then I'm just stay. If he gets the double digits, just stay away.
Let's talk about another guy that a lot of people have been staying away from, and last week it worked out. Saquon Barkley, 7,200. I think he broke like maybe one play over like 15 yards. Outside of that, it was pretty gross and pretty tough to watch, especially if you were trying to be early on that situation. Is it possible that all these people were just a week too early though, and this is the week to jam in Saquon?
It just come down to, I think you're not going to see people on Saquon, and deservedly so, especially if you get Mike Glennon at quarterback. But that actually might help them with the fact that they just run even more. If you look at it, how do you beat Miami? More on the run and more of the middle of the field. Like, that's why Sterling Shepard's an intriguing play. If healthy, who knows? It sounds like Kadarius Toney is out, but you don't beat him outside. You beat him in the middle of the field and with the run. And with screens and Saquon Barkley, I think that you could look at, and the only reason I bring him up is because 7,200. That's why. If he was 8,200, no way on earth. If he was even like 7,800, I'd probably be hesitant. But at this price, I'm willing to gamble on him. He is not a stone cold lock here. He's one that I would say that if you're looking to differentiate your lineup a little bit as a lock, let's be honest. If you and I had this show next week, Joe, you have the jersey up there, and we were saying Saquon just got us $120 and a touchdown, nobody would be shocked.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Let's keep this thing moving. By the way, though, before we get to wide receiver, wanted to ask a quick favor of you guys to leave a rating and review on this podcast. RateThisPodcast.com/The Joe Holka Show. Easiest way to get there, would really help me out. Wide receiver locks of the week. Let's start with Hunter Renfrow. Jake, 6,400 in that same game we were just talking about against Washington. Tell us why you like Renfrow kind of in the intermediate area of the field against this defense.
Just because Hunter Renfrow is Sterling Shepard, and Sterling Shepard's the better Jacoby Myers because he actually scores touchdowns. And Hunter Renfrow is, if you're going Derek Carr and you want to get away from everybody going to Deshaun Jackson, just play Hunter Renfrow. It's just volume king, and he's good bet to score a touchdown. That one's simple. We can just move on from that. That's just Derek Carr, use Hunter Renfrow, and then you get away from everybody using Deshaun Jackson.
Renfro's like the guy that always pops into optimals because of how good he's been this year, and no one ever plays him.
Nobody ever plays Hunter Renfrow.
It's really, I don't know, maybe it's hard to, it seems like the low upside play that people don't like to do, and there's still a ton of value in guys like that, especially guys that are targeted like him that can't score touchdowns on FanDuel. So Jalen Waddle, 6,900.
6,400. That's the best. That's the biggest thing. Yes. Yeah. Jalen Waddle. 16 for 500 more. And this is the other thing on the flip side of this bowl. The Giants are a very good secondary, but the one thing that they do, and I think I said this to you either last week or the week before, the one thing they do is they give up receptions and yards, but that's because they keep everything in front of them. And that's why you worry about outside receivers against them, similar to Miami, similar to Darius Slay and the Eagles and the Raiders. You don't play like the outside perimeter guys, you play the underneath. Jalen Waddle, even if Devonta Parker is healthy and plays this week, who the hell knows? But even if Jalen Waddle, do you know this? I just did a show yesterday, trivia-wise. Jalen Waddle's 5th in the league in receptions, 5th.
Yeah, that's wild, man. And I feel like we've been talking about it all year, but him just taking one of those shorter passes to the house, like it finally happened last week. The Sims agree with you, Jake. 15% of teams nearly that have the optimal lineup do have Jalen Waddle at 6,900 this week. So I like this one a lot. Anything?
I see that.
Yeah, Gesicki's right there too. But so I'm wondering if like we're still we don't have Parker in target share wise, but I don't think Waddle. It really, if anything, it helps Waddle in some ways, right? We'll take away a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Waddle. I'd be more worried about Gesicki.
Me too.
If Parker's out there.
Okay, so let's talk about another wide receiver grouping that is a little bit in flux, and let's go to Brandon Ayuk before we go to your last wide receiver. So Brandon Ayuk, 7K against Seattle, obviously with Debo out for at least 1 to 2 weeks. This is like a huge opportunity for Ayuk to finally show us what he can do. He's 7K, so you got to pay for it, but this is a pretty nice spot to do it.
It is a pretty nice spot, and that's as simple as it gets, is the fact that there's no Debo Samuel. Ayuk has came on the past couple weeks. Apparently, look, we joke about it a lot. And say get Shanahan again at the running backs, and we were frustrated earlier this year where there was like Brandon Ayuk and Shanahan's out there saying he's just not ready, and everybody's sitting there like, did you not see Brandon Ayuk last year? But at this point, we can mock Shanahan for some of his calls and go back to the Super Bowl, but at the same time, he's been honest, and in Brandon Ayuk's case, he was right. Brandon Ayuk, once he got his, I guess, full 100% step back, whatever you want to call it, he's been great with the fact that Debo's been out there. So also underrated, Jimmy Garoppolo, and also in this situation is that, yes, it's in Seattle, but also Seattle's defense is not something that you're too worried about this year. This is a pure volume play similar to Jalen Waddle, but with a better ADOT and better touchdown upside.
You mentioned that you weren't on JT at running back. So your last wide receiver that we're going to talk about is Michael Pittman. He's 6,800 at Houston. Man, just a massive total for the Colts here. So I don't know. Michael Pittman's one of those guys that like he's coming off of like what looked like a horrendous week, right? Like he was getting some targets, but really didn't make anything happen down the field. Just gets absolutely bullied by, I forget what cornerback it was for Tampa Bay, who had like, I don't know, like he had 3-4 inches at least on him. So Michael Pittman this week, some recency bias, like huge total. Like what else? What else is there?
Yes. No, I love the recency bias, and I'm not in on Jonathan Taylor. That's tough. It's the 10,500. Just tough to, it's tough to build that line. And again, and it comes down to I'll take Joe Mixon for the 1,000 savings.
Yep.
But you look at it, Tennessee was 2 weeks ago, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nick Westbrook-Akina went for 100 yards against you. That's all you need to say. And it's Michael Pittman, and I love the fact that Michael Pittman recency bias, as you said, people have forgotten just 3 weeks ago how much everybody wanted Michael Pittman as a top 10, top 15 play week in and week out against Houston. And it's not just the total. What is Vegas has him at like 46 or 47, and they're a 9-point favorite. So the implied total on their side is massive. And I know a lot of that comes with Jonathan Taylor, but if Carson Wentz is going to throw a touchdown or two, there's a good bet Michael Pittman's catching one of them.
Yeah. I'm with you completely on that. I guess in terms of recency bias, this is one that you're going to have to help me with because I am right there. George Kittle is 6,300 against the Seattle team as well. I just paid up for him last week, got absolutely burned, missed the cash line by like less than a point in the 1K, which was rough. Had Dalvin on that team also. But we can't talk about this. Can we go back to George Kittle without Debo this week?
1,000,000%. So initially when I sent you my picks, I said George Kittle, the end. But because here's why. Foster Moreau is going to be so popular, and for good reason. Foster Moreau, I'm not saying don't play Foster Moreau. I have Foster Moreau inside my seasonal top 10 ranks this week because 100% of the snaps when Darren Waller was out, and then played a enormous amount of snaps last week, even when Darren Waller was out there in the first half of the game. Rob Gronkowski is a nice play as well, but you get George Kittle, $700 cheaper than Gronkowski, and you pay up to him, so you get away from the people that are going Foster Moreau. And it's George Kittle was just 2 weeks ago, had a good game, and now again, no Debo Samuel. I don't know if I have the guts to do this one, but the way that Garoppolo has been playing, you look at his last 4 games. Last week wasn't huge, but look at his last 4 games. A Garoppolo, Ayuk, Kittle stack. Look, I see you smiling already.
So. I did it last week because like the Debo thing, it's really hard for me to play Debo with Garoppolo because it feels like if Debo gets there, a lot of it's going to be on the ground also, which takes away from touchdowns through the air. So yeah, that's literally the double stack I did with a couple of Minnesota guys last week, man. It didn't work. So this is the week. This is the week for sure.
This is the week until Elijah Mitchell gets 47 touches this week.
That's the wrinkle. Yep. Yeah, that's the wrinkle. I honestly, I kind of ignored him a little bit. I figured like all the finger stuff that was going on, but man, Shane Hankins loves him. So like, maybe I should have just like completely ignored that and just played him.
Well, so no, that's the thing is, we get caught in this sometimes. We can only go off of the reports that we have. And there was not one report out there who was saying Elijah Mitchell was 100%.
Well, Sermon gets hurt right away too, right? So
yeah, can't catch passes in practice, and he's only carrying the ball in the one hand, and blah blah blah, and all this type of stuff. Yeah, there was a lot. And to be honest, to go back to it real quick, I don't dislike Elijah Mitchell either because he's still under 8,000. What was he, 77 or 7,600 somewhere around there?
Yep.
I did want to mention real quick too, also because it's like locks, and I think there's a lock pivot here. Is I think recency bias. There's gonna be a lot of people on Leonard Fournette, especially against Atlanta. And I initially had the same feeling, and I sent you Fournette in my list, and then I dug deeper on Atlanta, and I'm looking, and Atlanta. Do you know they haven't given up a 100-yard rusher this year?
I did not know
it's just
that.
because it's
For how
crazy.
bad they've been, no one has said that before. I don't think.
That's the thing, and it's not that there has been bad games against them. Like if you go through the box scores and look at it, there's some very productive. It's just the fact that you're not getting the volume for the running backs that you would expect. And I was looking, and Chuba Hubbard was the only person this year, only running back to have over 17 carries against them. Wow. The only one. That's what I say. Like teams just, while they're very beatable, they're so beatable in the pass that they just don't even use their running backs that much. So I'm not saying Fournette can't hit. I'm not saying Fournette can't smash again and score multiple touchdowns, but I'm not sure if you get the 100 yards and 1-2 touchdowns. I think you might need a 2-touchdown game because and that's why. That's what I'm actually going Tom Brady in the passing game in this game.
No doubt. No doubt. Before we build a lineup here, going to bug you guys one last time. I'm subscribed to the new second YouTube channel for the show. A bunch of exclusive clips, picks, going to go up there throughout the entire week. I don't want you guys to miss anything. Link in the description. Check out the pinned comment below. All that good stuff. Pretty easy to find. And let me know what you guys think of some of the clips that are going to go up over there. So let's go ahead and build a lineup. This is the Listener League, FanDuel.com/Holka. It is a little bit smaller, $16.50 this week. $5, 3 max, rake free, all that good stuff. So what are we doing here, Jake? I'll let you take the wheel and at least pick us a couple players here.
Let's put Mixon and Gibson in and start from there. And while you're doing that, I do want to, let me go back. Gibson or Gibran or however you say your name, the JT pitch count. I will say that is the one concern on how JT doesn't smash. And you saw it last week. Now he still smashed, but Nyheim Hines, a lot of the 2-minute drill and a lot of it, it's just like it was getting annoying, honestly.
Yeah, that's like something that like we saw that at the beginning of the year, right? So like, why did we all think that like there was no chance that couldn't happen again? You know what I mean? So like, that's one of the things that has always bothered me about just like playing running backs, where there's like a guy that could just walk in the right game script and take some of that usage away. So you never know, especially when we're talking 10-5, like that's a little bit tougher to swallow. So as of now, 2 running backs in here, Jake. What's the quarterback stack that you want to at least start with here?
I don't know if I'm going to stack quarterback, honestly.
You're going naked Hurts, aren't you?
No, I was going to say, let's come back to quarterback and see where we stand.
I like it. We're going the backwards build here.
Yeah,
I like
I'm going backwards because I put Kittle in, and I want to see what this kind of backs us into here. And
give me a defense. Give me something. I'm blind here. Give me something.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about defense this week. Ooh. I completely skipped over.
I think the chalk is going to probably be the Dolphins against the Giants. They're 4K. Yeah, but they're mid-range. If you wanted to go down, maybe the Chargers against Cincinnati. A lot of pass attempts on the other side. Like you said, there's been some volatility for the Chargers defense this year, but I think those would be the 2.
Pay up for the Eagles.
You could.
I think Miami. Yeah, Miami is. There's no reason to really not use them. I'm trying to see if there's a pivot here.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like one thing that's unfortunate about Miami is it is a 1 p.m. defense. I do kind of like to play the 4 p.m. defenses because then if you're in a lot of trouble, you can just pivot to something that's lower owned. So like I think from an ownership perspective, there's not really going to be a chalk defense in the afternoon. So if you just want to go pure ceiling, maybe the Rams against Jacksonville, maybe Baltimore against Pittsburgh, but both of those are extremely expensive. Yeah, you could go Philly.
You could go. Philly is expensive too. That's the problem. There's a lot. Of, you know, it's not that expensive.
Who's that?
Tampa Bay. 4,300.
Let's go Tampa. That gets us away from probably the Brady chalk that's incoming. I think he's going to be the most popular quarterback.
Yeah, and with the Tampa Bay thing it's one thing is you want to look for hopefully pushing the other team to have to pass more. And Matt Ryan's,
I know
not having a lot of success this year.
Yeah, it's not going to go well if that happens for sure.
This also takes away from playing Cordell Patterson, so that's not if you want to do that. So,
all right, so 6,700 the rest of the way. We got tons of room, but we still got to pick a quarterback.
6,700. Go to the Giants game. Waddle, and this will actually have to change. Bring it back with Shepard for now.
Okay.
I will be texting you, obviously. If there is no Daniel Jones, that's going to change. If Shepard doesn't play, that's going to change. But
limited practice Thursday. But yeah, we'll see. That quad injury is definitely one to monitor, but no one's going to play him if he's back. Is that kind of where we would want to attack Miami then, or you just kind of want to have a lower on piece with that game?
It's just both. It's like I said, both of these secondaries are you attack them with Waddles and Shepards.
Okay.
And you could just go for it. Put Pittman in there at 68 and keep these nice and low here.
This is the longest we've waited to do a quarterback, but I kind of like this approach. And now stack wise, we got 7K the rest of the way, so we could in theory move up to I think Hurts and Devonta fits. We're down by 200. We can't make that fit, unfortunately.
You can't make that fit?
But we could move down to defense at that point, just to the Dolphins if we wanted to.
Well, I'm scrolling down at wide receiver to see who's beneath here. There's nobody that we have.
I'm not going to force you into Jalen. I was just throwing him in there to see where we're at.
No, that makes a lot of sense. God, I don't want to get off Kittle.
You go like a one-off OBJ or Van Jefferson, something like that?
We could. OBJ also limited. Interestingly enough, again, what was Ayuke 7?
Yeah,
so that doesn't get us there. You know what? I'm kind of curious. What is the Jimmy Garoppolo Ayuke stack get us? Can you do that?
See, Jimmy Ayuke, yeah, but then we got 500 left if we wanted to go that range.
Wow.
So at that point, we could move up at defense from Tampa. We could move up to that gets you Philly.
Gets me Philly. Gets me Claypool.
Does get you Claypool.
It gets me Claypool, Mike Williams, Hunter Renfrow.
If we went Claypool, you would have enough to get to Tampa if you wanted to stay on that.
Yeah, I could stay on Tampa.
Let's do that. I think I like the Claypool play in this one. I think that like not a lot of pieces are going to play that game.
Shepard. Yeah.
All right, let's go with that. Jake Ciely, everyone. Make sure you guys follow him on Twitter if you haven't already at AllInKid. Check out all the work over at The Athletic, BetsTV. Jake, good luck this week, man. This is a unique build. What I love about it, it's basically what I played last week, so I was probably a week early on it, so probably going to smash.
We will. I might play it, though. I feel like this is going to be my tinker lineup, and I'm going to ruin my streak. That's what's going to happen.
All right, well, we'll report back. Appreciate you, man. Talk to you later.
All right.
See ya. What's going on, guys? Haven't had a chance to check in with the chat yet today, but a bunch of people in here enjoying the show. Hopefully, toss a like on this video if you haven't already. Would really appreciate it. Helps more people find the videos, all of that good stuff. Oh, before we get TJ in here to talk through some GPP plays for this week, I did want to touch on quickly why we decided to do a second YouTube channel. So it's been something I've been kind of wrestling with for a while, actually. But I think one of the things that's really nice about doing all these segments with the guests, doing the live streams, is that we have a lot of different things that we can throw up on the channel. It kind of got to the point where I was throwing up like 3 or 4 videos a day at points through the week. So I thought it might be a little bit better to spread that out a little bit. So I would love it. There is a link in the chat right now. We got 139 people in here. And just to kind of check live, we have 91 subscribers. So maybe we'll get over 100 before TJ gets here. That would be awesome. It does take 1,000 over there before we can go live, do anything like that. I'm probably going to continue to just go live on the main channel, but I am going to be throwing stuff up kind of intermittently on the new channel. We'll do some clips over there. We'll also do some more YouTube shorts, that kind of thing. I guess needed like more space, honestly, is kind of what it came down to. So a couple new subscribers already today that I wanted to shout out. Mr. Devin, we got Andrew, Daniel Weisenberg, Mick Dagger, Mason was in here earlier, Jamar Young. How's it going, guys? How we doing? Bunch of familiar faces still in the chat, of course. We got Tone Lock in here. Is there a Joe Holka show too, or is this just a Joe Holka show? It's still the same show, my man. It's just some of the segments are gonna like randomly go on the other channel if there's no room for them. Like the way it kind of works is if I upload a video, say I upload the Stacks video with Reeps, and then directly after that, like an hour or two later, I upload the wide receiver video with Harmon. A lot of times they kind of cannibalize each other, right? So like there's a lot of people that might not even be served that video on their homepage. They get served the new one instead. So it kind of takes away from some of the other stuff. So if we eventually have like two main channels, maybe the new one is some of the shorter form stuff and all of that. Hopefully we just have two kind of home bases, right? So what it comes down to, I'll just show you guys exactly what I'm talking about here. If we just go over to, this is kind of what it looks like. So you'll scroll down, you'll see it. It's literally right here. If you go to my homepage, scroll down, this is the new channel. There's 2 full videos on here. You'll still see a lot of the same stuff, like the tilt space recap might be on the new channel, that sort of thing. We'll do some more YouTube shorts. And yeah, I think a lot of it is just going to funnel through both from now on. So I want to make sure that you guys don't miss anything for sure. So yeah, that's definitely the news and notes that I wanted to go through. Also, this Keenan Allen thing, man, it is in the way in my office right now. So this thing has to go. So hopefully you guys have gotten into the drawing for this thing as we're kind of talking about the new YouTube channel. As I'm hitting the wrong button, we're talking about the new YouTube channel. There is a contest for this. Step 1, like and retweet this. It is the pinned tweet. Step 2, fill out this Pristine auction form. I'm sure a lot of you guys watching this have already filled this out. Step 3, you have to subscribe to the new YouTube channel. And you must follow me on Twitter to win. But 81 people in here right now. I would say there's probably only about 75 people that have done everything required to be involved in this drawing for the Keenan Allen picture. So yeah, wanted to make sure that we got that rolling and you guys get in there. So that was the news and notes. I'm gonna go get TJ ready and we'll be back with some GPP plays for week 13. We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. It's the Week 13 top tournament plays of the week, position by position. Guys that might go a little bit overlooked in GPPs and can help us get to the top of the DFS leaderboards. Plus, we're going to show you guys how to use all this information to build a GPP lineup live at the end. I'm not alone, thankfully. I'll get to go through this with my good buddy from 4for4 Football, director of DFS at 4for4 Football. You can find him on Twitter at TJ Hernandez. TJ, what's going on, man?
Hulk, what's up, buddy? Missed you last week. We missed each other with the holiday week, but hopefully you had a good holiday and couple good slates. We basically had 2 full slates last week. Hopefully your listeners got on Fournette without me being here, because that was one of my plays last week.
Oh God, that's brutal, man. We were talking about it, like I didn't even consider it for some weird reason.
Yeah,
I completely ignored the Sims. Like it was CPAT, it was Leonard Fournette. Like all those guys are actually popping as like reasonable lower owned plays. But you would have been here to push us a little bit further into it, man. So we can't have you missing again. That's the worst.
Yeah, hopefully we keep the hot streak going. We had the Rodgers stacks a couple weeks back, and I had the Fournette last week. I think we got some good ones this week.
What are we doing content for anyways for? I know you should be rich at this point. You're just giving us all the gold. For the GPPs.
It's just the classic. I just haven't put it all together. I've actually been on a nice little GPP winning streak, but just nothing where I've put it like all together. So hopefully it's crescendoing to a nice big one.
This is the week. All right, let's not waste any more time here. Quarterback GPP play of the week. We got Taylor Heineke, 7,100 at the Raiders. I think this game is going to be steamed up a little bit, but absolutely no one is going to play Taylor Heineke, right?
Yeah, I think some people will play Heineke, but compared to some of the other games or the other plays that we have available in this game, it's just looking like a really good leverage play. And this is really just the passing game in general for Washington. So we won't cover all of their pass catchers individually. We'll lump them in here. But as far as this game goes, 50-point over-under, 1 of 3 games with an over-under of that size. But it is the smallest spread at 2.5. So we would think that there is some back and forth with these passing games, or at least with these offenses. Both defenses in this game bottom 10 in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. Right now, 4for4 projections have Gibson as the mega chalk. He's the only player we have projected for over 30% ownership, with McKissick likely out, with him coming off of that 36 touch game on national television. And then on the Raiders side, Hunter Renfro's a great value. Foster Moreau, probably the second highest, most popular player if Darren Waller doesn't play. So then if that happens, then people are going to be playing Carr, right? If they're playing a quarterback in this game, it's going to be Carr. So there's just a lot of leverage here against the Raiders passing game, against Gibson with playing Heineke, and the Washington passing game. With McKissick out, it makes stacking Heineke very easy. We saw Logan Thomas return last week. Him and Terry McLaurin combined for 40% of targets, 80% of air yards, because so many of their running backs are seeing negative air yards. So 80% air yards for them. And then if you want to save with the stack or forego McLaurin or Thomas to save even more salary, DeAndre Carter saw a nice 15% target share last week and 25% air yard share. The Raiders have allowed 20 or more FanDuel fantasy points to 4 of the last 6 quarterbacks they faced, and Heineke will give you a little bit on the ground, 25 yards per game. And if he does do well on the ground, that only leans more into the McKissick leverage, especially if he steals a rushing touchdown.
Yeah, one of the big questions I had in this game in terms of like what Heineke is going to be able to do out there is one of the things we were talking about earlier today, TJ. So the Las Vegas Raiders actually have faced the 3rd most attempts in terms of deep balls this year, but they've actually been the 5th best team at defending those deep balls, right? So what do we do with that?
Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily need a deep ball to hit. I mean, McLaurin could get there on deep balls, but the Washington football team, they're not a team that relies on the deep ball, actually kind of like the Raiders do on the other side. So what we're looking for in this type of play is we're just looking for the touchdown variance, right? We're looking for it to shoot out like we would hope, for Washington to be able to move the ball, whether it's even if it is with Gibson, right? If Gibson's the one moving the ball and he doesn't get in the end zone, then it's going to be Heineke in the pass game getting those touchdowns, or Heineke rushing in. So, I mean, Gibson can still get there on yardage, but we need touchdowns on FanDuel. So really, we're just looking for that touchdown variance.
Speaking of touchdowns and speaking of this game, let's move on to the running back lock of the week. I guess this is not the lock of the week. The running back GPP play of the week, Josh Jacobs. He is 7K against this same Washington football team. But I think, like you said, a lot of people are going to go Foster Moreau. A lot of people are probably just going to figure out ways, like in optimals at least, Hunter Renfrow is going to be popping, right? So Josh Jacobs probably 3rd in that list of terms of like the bringbacks or even just players on the Raiders side of the ball. So tell us why you like him.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically the same play as Heineke, just packaged as the Raiders running back, right? We're taking all of the same plays that we just talked about and building leverage with Jacobs. If a running back goes off in this game and it's him instead of Gibson, you're getting a ton of leverage there. If the touchdown variance goes Jacobs' way instead of the pass catchers or instead of Carr, you're getting a lot of leverage there. Jacobs is interesting because you can play him as a bring back, a really unique bring back option in Heineke stacks, or you can even just play him as a one off if
Mhm.
you are, if you're just not stacking this game. Obviously, especially if you're playing a bunch of lineups, there's actually lots of stacking options this week. So you're gonna have lineups where you don't have either quarterback in this game, and I think it's interesting to include Jacobs because then you're getting just in that one lineup where you're not playing this game, you're getting like all the leverage in one swoop, right? If this game either doesn't shoot out or the Raiders control it, or neither pass game goes off and Gibson doesn't go off, like Jacobs gets like all of your leverage, one stop shop. And then he's kind of like in a unique salary range. Running
Yeah.
back's crazy because we have a ton of like really good values, like what below 7K, 6,500 or below,
Just
or
gonna
then
say like
seven or
6,500. Move it. Like people
yeah.
are just gonna play Jamal Williams in that tier, right? They're not gonna try and get up to Josh Jacobs. Almost perfect.
Yeah, we got Henderson, Mitchell, and then of course at the top, and then some of the other elite guys like 7,500 or above, and then Williams, Montgomery, Gibson down at 6,500 or lower. So it kind of just is in this weird range that everybody's going to ignore. And there's so many good running backs on this slate that it's like it's kind of going to be hard for like any one running back to blow away the field because we have so many good running backs in good spots, right? And Jacobs can be a player where the Raiders can really lean on him, and again we get the touchdown variance. If he gets in for two, he's right in there in the middle of the pack with all of these running backs. Like, I mean, there are some smash spots. I think Madison's probably the most obvious smash spot. But he's priced up too. So I just like Jacobs, like weird salary range. I like that you can get so much leverage off this game with one player.
Yeah, after running the Sims, again, runthesims.com/Holka, you can get 10% off. It can simulate the slate 10,000 times very quickly. Alexander Madison is the highest player in the optimal rate. And then we see a lot of guys kind of in this price range, TJ. Like we see James Conner in here. We see Leonard Fournette. And really, I think it ends up being like almost like a dead zone. So where like it's almost a little bit harder to play a guy like Josh Jacobs. So I like that call a lot. But before we move on, pumped to announce that we do have a second YouTube channel for the Joe Holka Show now. So make sure you guys go over there and subscribe immediately. Going to be rolling out more clips from the guests, more exclusive picks and analysis, all that stuff. Link in the description. Going to need your guys' help to build this thing up late in the season. So make sure you guys check that out. There's going to be some content over there that won't be anywhere else. Wide receiver GPP play of the week, TJ. Van Jefferson, he's 5,800 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We were just kind of talking about it with Harmon a little bit. This offense is a little bit in flux, right? Well, we haven't seen like the alpha target share for Cooper Kupp, at least I guess recently. I think you tweeted something out pretty quickly after that game, just how close it was with target share and with snaps, right? So talk about Van Jefferson and these wide receivers a little bit.
Yeah, we're actually for this play, we're hoping Odell plays, right? Odell is he has a hip injury. I think he's limited practice, but it sounds like he's going to play. So we saw obviously Kupp is going to get his, but then we saw Odell come in, scored a touchdown, 80 plus yards on 10 targets. So I think people are now looking at this team, this passing game, and thinking, we know Kupp, but like kind of what are we going to do with the other guys? Probably they all cannibalize each other's ownership a little bit. So Kupp's not going to be like the 30 or 35% guy he might be in the spot. He might be like 25, whereas Odell and Jefferson are going to eat into each other's the second guy. I think probably Odell ends up being the more popular one. And then Van Jefferson and Higbee kind of being left to pick up the scraps, with obviously Stafford's going to be included in stacks, and people will also play Henderson a lot as with the Rams as really big favorites. So we're getting probably the lowest owned primary target in this offense at 5,800. He still saw 9 targets last week. He actually led the team in air yards. He's like, even though Odell caught the long touchdown, Jefferson is consistently going to be getting those deep targets, and Jaguars are last in completion percentage allowed on deep balls, 20 plus air yards, bottom 5 in PPR points per target on those deep balls. And then obviously this kind of has goes back to before Odell got his full-time role last week. But over the last 3 games, Jefferson is top 5 in expected points according to the 4for4 breakout model. So I like including Jefferson instead of Odell in stacks in this game. I think, kind of as an aside, it actually makes a lot of sense not to exclude Cup. I think people are going to look at Cup and be like, is it worth paying up for him? If we're looking at where we're going to spend salary at this week, it actually makes a lot more sense to pay up for Cup than it does to pay up for the running backs, right? Because we don't have Tyreek, Devontae, or Debo on the slate. Whereas at the running back, sure, we have Mixon, Eckler, Madison up in salary, but we have so many running backs projected similar to those guys that Cup is way more likely to lap the field than any running back, right? We can get similar running back points from other players. So I think it makes a lot of sense to include Jefferson with Cup rather than like fading Cup to go like a Jefferson Odell type deal.
There was like I can't remember if it was last week or the week before. They all kind of blend into I guess another at this point, but we had a week where there was like 5 or 6 like really good running back plays, right? So you can't play all of them. And I think that was the week where you really needed to have, I can't remember which alpha wide receiver it was that went completely nuclear, but everyone's trying to jam in all of these running backs at the high end when even if you move down a tier, it's not as big of a difference, right? Because there's so many good plays.
Exactly.
So roster construction wise, it does make sense to kind of grab a guy that can separate at the position. So in terms of tight end, TJ Hawkinson 6,100, I think everyone's going to play Kittle in this range. Obviously not the best matchup for Hawkinson against Minnesota, but man, I mean, sometimes like this is a guy I'm always wrong about because the targets are there, right?
Yeah, Kittle in this range, and I think Pitts probably gets a little bit of gets a little bit of run in this range too, just because he's going to be the only natural. Well, Cordarrelle Patterson too, but the natural pass catching bring back if people are stacking Tampa Bay, which I think they will do a lot. But I just like this game from a mini correlation perspective, the Detroit and the Minnesota game, because we have probably 2 of the most popular running backs on the slate in Alexander Madison and Jamal Williams. And so rather than like looking for leverage off of this game and like maybe going with like a full pass catcher stack, I think it makes sense to decide which one of the running backs you want and include a pass catcher from this game. And TJ Hawkinson is going to be very low owned with those other 2 tight ends that we talked about, with the running backs taking a lot of ownership in this game. And this game does have a lot of stacking intrigue because Detroit is just bad in every aspect of defense. They're bad against the pass and bad against the run. And Minnesota has gotten beaten a lot especially with the deep ball, but you're relying on Jared Goff. So I think there's enough like really good stacks that I don't think you need to force like a cousin stacks, even though I'm fine with it. But a mini stack in this game, I think, is just a fantastic way to gain leverage, especially with the tight end position where we want to build in that that correlation, just because it's hard to find a good tight end.
It reminds me of that slate we talked about where I guess putting Hunter Henry on the other side of a really chalky running back made a lot of sense, just because if you do hit on that 5 or less % Hunter Henry, then you have the chalk like attached to that. By default, your roster is a little bit different than those other teams with a chalk running back. So I like that a lot. At defense, we're talking about the Los Angeles Chargers at the Cincinnati Bengals. They're 3,600 on FanDuel, so definitely a cheap price point. This Chargers team, I guess not even just the defense, has been kind of hit or miss. Like they've either looked really good or looked really bad. Sounds like this week it might be a decent chance to go to the defense though.
Yeah, we're getting if we're playing the Chargers, we're getting a pay down option sub $4,000. Don't have a lot of those that we love this week. If there's like, I think is Miami 4,000 or 3,900, they're probably going to be
4K.
Yeah, so they're going to be the popular defense coming off that big game. They've been playing really well lately, but this is a game, the Chargers and the Bengals, where there is a lot of shootout potential and people are going to be stacking it a lot. So you are going to get a ton of leverage by targeting one of the defenses. And even if it is high scoring games are sneaky leverage, sneaky upside games for defenses, because it's just more pass attempts, more sack opportunities, more turnover opportunities. Chargers top 10 in pressure rate, Cincinnati bottom 10 in adjusted sack rate allowed. Burrow has the 5th highest interception rate this year. He's also thrown 2 pick sixes. That probably isn't predictable or predictive at all, but it's still worth noting. That means he's throwing a pick six usually has to be a pretty bad ball. So if the Chargers and Bosa can get some pressure on him, I think it's a really nice target.
Yep, I like that one a lot just because of the price, right? It gets you to a lot of stuff. So you guys know the drill at this point. You've heard from TJ. We have the GPP plays. I want you guys to pause this video. Let me know in the comments your favorite Week 13 tournament play. TJ, ready to build a FanDuel team, my man?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. FanDuel.com/Holka to get into the listener league. It's a little bit smaller this week, so make sure we fill this thing up. $5, 3 max, rake free, all that good stuff. Where are we starting with this one, TJ?
Let's go with the biggest leverage of the week. Fade the Gibson, get on the passing game. So let's just go with that concentrated passing game we talked about and start with Heineke, McLaurin, and Thomas.
Scary Terry. Love it. What did you think of Logan Thomas and like his usage? Like when he finally comes back, like he's still questionable this week, but he looks like he's limited in practice. But I wanted to see snap wise, like he did get 6 targets in this game. So do you think he gets right back into that role that we've I guess come to know with Logan Thomas?
Yeah,
So
I mean,
cheap.
like I said, I mean, even with like the somewhat, he didn't play a ton of snaps, but still, him and Terry combined for so much of that usage. And then on the final, I think it was their final drive, he gets a touchdown overturn, which I mean, I'm still not sure that was the right call. And if he scores that touchdown, he's probably like almost a chalk play this week just because
Sure.
of this game, this possible game scenario and game flow, right? So I think he's fantastic at sub 6K.
Let's run it back with Josh Jacobs, like we talked about, and then what I kind of there we go. Why is Josh Jacobs not popping out? There we go. I kind of like the idea of just throwing in Chargers for now. For all those reasons, we can get a lot of these plays that we talked about.
Chargers defense.
Chargers defense, yeah. And then that gives us 7,300 the rest of the way. So is there like an expensive guy that you're trying to like make sure you get access to?
Cup. Definitely Cup because of all the reasons we talked about. Just having Cup, the ability to lap the field this week compared to running backs, I think is really important. How many? What is that? 3.
So now we have 6,800 left. We need a running back, wide receiver, and a flex. Is there a mini? I guess is there a mini that you like at 1 p.m. because we have all 4 p.m. players except for Chargers right now. So I think that would be the play. Try and find a 1 p.m. mini that you like.
I don't know if we already put in Chargers defense. I think
so something from the Tampa Bay game, something from the Minnesota game potentially.
If we have so much room, do we
could just play JT?
I was gonna say, could we? Well, that's actually really interesting because that's like one of the. Even though I talked about all the running backs being
it's almost easier not to play 10-5.
Interchangeable. And JT's he's that one like flip the build. But what I was thinking is
it's hard to do with salary.
Yeah, is like what about like Fournette Tampa defense?
We could do that. Tampa is actually a reasonably priced defense this week also. Like they're only 4,300. They're like basically middle of the pack. So I don't hate that at all, especially if I don't know. So that was a question I had for you. Do you think people are just going to chase these Fournette touchdowns or like everyone's talking about how they were the easy leverage option last week? And I don't know. The Brady stacks are going to be super popular, aren't they?
I think there's too many good running backs this week for Fournette to just be like crazy owned. Like I think if he doesn't get 4 touchdowns last week, he's probably like 12% instead of 20%. But I mean, I'm fine taking 20%. Like if we're going to load up on a Washington passing game, say, and pay up for Cup, like Tampa Bay is going to score touchdowns, right?
Sure.
So like, let's just try to have Fournette run it back again, even if he only gets 2 of them. If Tampa Bay scores 5 and like Evans or Godwin don't go nuclear, then we're still fine with 2 from Fournette. Like this offense can still always like hit and not be GPP viable because of how many people can score, right? So I think I don't think it's definitely not chasing touchdown because Fournette usage is through the roof lately. And again, if he gets like 101, you're still probably fine at like a 17 or 20% rostered, right?
Yeah, I'm with you. Do we want to try and do what we were talking about with Cup and Jefferson together? Because then 6,300 is like perfect.
I was kind of just thinking that, and then would that leave us one
6,300 in the flex? So looking at like Devonta Smith one off. If you did want to go Gibson, need some chalk there. We probably could with this build if you wanted to go that route. I think that's probably the 2 options.
I do think it's going to be like an overwhelming 3 running back week, just because we have so many value options. So I think just playing a 4th wide receiver is probably going to be probably
small
going to
field,
give
like
you
maybe
a-
throw him in there, but in like this field size that we're building for, I would say, yeah, absolutely.
How much?
Probably just
How much do we
Devonta.
have left?
6,300. The reason that I brought up Devonta is like one of those players where like the Jets just give up a lot of deep balls, right? So
I think I would probably rather just go back down to Chargers and not correlate my defense and move up.
let's see where
And
we're
then
at
what
then.
would-
So Chargers in there would give
And that
us
probably gives us something
7K. So that
Yeah,
could
that's-
be the James Conner play. A lot of different ones, right? Or James Conner is just more expensive than that, actually.
I kind of like Ayuk with
That's what I
Debo
was
out.
thinking of.
Yeah, I think that's the move.
Okay. Brandon Ayuk. Let's go. TJ Hernandez, everyone. Make sure you guys follow him on Twitter at TJ Hernandez. Check out 4for4, all that stuff. A bunch of plans for the postseason that you were just telling me about that I think people are going to be definitely excited about. Check out the podcast with friend of the show, Matt Harmon, later in the week. DFS MVP. TJ, anything else, my man?
Yeah, just check out all the DFS MVP episodes. Sunday mornings we're doing our GPP last look on the Discord. So make sure you check out the 4for4 Discord as well.
Love it, man. See you next week. What's up, guys? Appreciate everyone that's still with us. We've definitely knocked out a bunch of stuff today. I'm dealing with a little bit of a headache, so we're probably going to go a little bit quicker through Thursday night football than normal, but I definitely wanted to thank all of you guys who have already subscribed to the other YouTube channel. We're over 100 subs already, so definitely make sure you keep an eye out. I'm going to try and bring as much interesting stuff over to that channel as well throughout the week, so you don't want to miss anything. Pin tweet, pin comment in the description, like the links everywhere, right? So 103 subscribers already is really awesome. So appreciate you guys for that. Let's jump into the Thursday night football breakdown and Sims results. We're going to go through Cowboys at Saints. So Dallas currently 6.5-point road favorites per FanDuel Sportsbook in this one. The over-under is at 46 points, but the Sharps appear to prefer the under in this one. But we do have a lot of public action on the over. People like to bet the overs in these Cowboys games in the public, so that's not super surprising. But how are we feeling about this one overall? I don't have a poll ready for you guys, but if there was one of those bets that you like, I want to hear from you guys in the chat. I think that the under is at least a little bit intriguing with the way the Saints are trying to win right now, right? I'm going to run the Sims here quickly because I want to see it first. Taysom Hill season, potentially. Look at that. Look at that. Tyler likes the under as well. He's with the Sharps. So I think the biggest thing that we should probably touch on here is Taysom Hill first. Because like even if like they don't have a lot of success through the air, just like the floor ceiling that this guy offers in any slate. I mean, I think he was over 25% of the team's rushing attempts when he was a starter. So that's one of those things to where like the touchdown upside of Taysom Hill is extremely high, and he's got extremely high floor as well. So if we're talking about on FanDuel, the single slate, definitely think that the quarterbacks are both in play. What's kind of interesting though, at least to me, is that only 29% of the optimal lineups had Taysom Hill in MVP, 20% ownership. Dak is the one that everyone seems to be on, but slightly over-owned. So despite being 35% of the MVPs in the optimal lineup, if we were to run this slate 10,000 times, it's a little bit under what the ownership is. So what we want to kind of focus on here is potentially under-owned flex spots and some guys that could pair well with these two quarterbacks. If it's not the quarterback, maybe you can make an argument in favor of Mark Ingram. 11% of the MVPs. No one's playing him at MVP. I think one of the, I guess, worst plays on the slate, just based on the data and the ownership projections right now at the MVP slot, would probably be Ezekiel Elliott. 16% projected ownership at MVP, only 6% of the optimal lineups. We've just seen them use so much more Tony Pollard recently. That's a really hard MVP one, I think, to walk through. Personally, I'm not walking through that door. That's for sure. So there is a lot of Dallas guys in the top of the Sims. So I guess what that kind of tells you in terms of texture is that if you did just want to play one of Ingram or Taysom Hill and do these Dallas onslaughts, I actually don't hate that idea. And you'll see that. So this lineup at the top, this is the exact opposite of what you would want to do in a large field tournament, but it gives you an idea of what might be somewhat optimal. 105 frequency is just massive. So if we run the slate 10,000 times, this exact combination is the optimal lineup 105 times. But it uses all of the salary, so it's going to be extremely popular. A lot of optimizers are going to pop up this exact combination. So no Zeke, it has Tony Pollard in it, both wide receivers, and Taysom Hill is the one-off on the other side. In terms of Dak, though, like, it's a pretty amazing spot. You know what I mean? I don't know why I just clicked out of that. There we go. It is a pretty amazing spot. Like, the offensive line is getting healthier every single week. Like, it's been a while since we've had like a full offensive line for the Cowboys in this spot. So I'm not really that worried about New Orleans having a ton of success. CeeDee Lamb is kind of interesting because he's so much more expensive than if we wanted to go to like some of these other, like even Amari Cooper, right? He's 1,500 more. CeeDee Lamb is obviously leading this team in target share, air yard share, all of that stuff, and he's getting a ton of red zone work. But yeah, I don't know. The matchup against the Saints in the slot is probably where I would want to go in this one, but we don't know how he's going to be feeling after COVID and all of that. Mark Ingram, I think like we're seeing it right here, right? He hit like raw points. Like, he's probably one of the better plays on the slate against Dallas. And I mean, that's just a nice price point for him, I think, if he ends up getting the majority of the work. What about Traquan? I'm curious where he ends up in here. So 19, almost 20% of the optimal lineups have Traquan in the flex. Only 10% ownership, though. So that's like one of the ones that really stood out to me when I was looking at this earlier today. Per usual, the kickers are just vastly overowned. 18% ownership, only 5% of the optimals. You just don't want to hold hands with the kicker people, in my opinion. What else? Amari looks to be like kind of right at ownership. Tony Pollard, significantly more optimal teams with Tony Pollard than at ownership. So I think that's a stand I'll probably take today. More Tony Pollard than Zeke, just across the board, even though the price is basically, I mean, 2K difference. I like the idea of, man, that's a pretty big discrepancy. I think the two big leverage spots are Tony Pollard and Traquan Smith, it looks like. Those are the two big ones. And then maybe moving up to Taysom Hill at MVP versus Dak on some builds. I think that makes some sense. Someone said, Justin, your name is absurd. Yeah, Justin, I'm not going to lie. You've been in this chat for months and years at this point. I've never attempted to say your last name, and I don't think I can do it. Great alphabet practice, indeed. What else on this slate, guys? Maybe if we wanted to take a chance on like Michael Gallup, Marquez Callaway, those type of guys, it would make some sense for differentiation. Specifically Callaway, but I was hoping that we would get them a little bit lower ownership than it looks like. It looks like it's basically right there with the optimal. Traquan looks to provide a decent amount more leverage. We didn't talk about Dalton Schultz. He's like right at owner. He seems like a little bit overpriced to me, but still in 20% of the flexes, so apparently I'm wrong there. But there's just a lot of different ways that these Cowboys can go at this point. It is a little bit more spread out than we'd like to see. Juwan Johnson, Noah Brown, like those are the guys that you would just like kind of hope and pray. Try and get a little bit different with those guys. But Noah Brown he's not going to be unowned. Same thing with Juwan Johnson. So there's not a ton of leverage down there that I really like. I think if I'm really trying to do things a little bit differently, it's probably just to have a little bit more Traquan than the field. It's kind of where I'm at on that. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this for now. Just battling a crazy headache for like the last hour and a half. So I'm glad we got all the segments done. I'm going to go get to some editing and make sure you guys get into the contest for the Keenan Allen. large photo. I guess the last news and notes is that I guess it's probably 50-50 at this point if I will be here on Sunday or not. I kind of wrestled with, do I record something before I leave and then play it live like we did a couple other weeks ago? I'm going to try and do something live. And it probably, if it's not on YouTube, maybe it'll be on TikTok. I'm not exactly sure. Just keep an eye on my Twitter. So if you haven't followed me on Twitter yet, definitely do that at Joe Holka. I'm most likely going to do a shorter show, probably on my phone, which will be, I mean, a little bit different than what we normally do, but we'll still get through all the normal analysis and whatnot. Just not going to be giving away any of the memorabilia on Sunday. The Keenan Allen, we might be able to just do that giveaway and just make that the one, but it will not be on the wheel. If you want to know how to get that, check out the Twitter as well. A little bit of a different contest for that since it is such a massive item. You guys haven't seen this thing yet. It is absolutely absurd, and I need it out of my office. So, all right, guys. Appreciate you. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. See you guys later.